technical difficulties extraordinaire. That doesn't even make sense. But, hey, shout out Zoom for continually dropping and crapping the bed, and Skype for doing the same. But now back to Zoom, so I guess I can't really complain. You know, if I'm using free services, I can't really complain, can I? So,
right.
Mr. Tony Moon, and in light of everything, through, I don't know, I found you online, and we started talking, and I was watching a video about the 1991 LA riots and the quote-unquote rooftop Koreans, and found your email, sent you an email, and I was like, man, that would be a cool guy to talk to. And you were like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, oh my God, let's do it. So that's where we are right now, and through some technical difficulties. I'm just blabbering right now. I'm not making any sense. How would you introduce yourself, man?
Cool. All right. Well, anyway, hey man, I just want to say thanks for having me on.
Of course.
My name, you already introduced me. Let's see, I'm an LA resident. I've been here since '77. I grew up here. I spent my whole life in LA. Right now I'm living outside of, the LA, city of LA, in a suburb east of LA. It's called San Gabriel. It's a really small city, so that's where I live. But I'm still, connected to the county. Mm-hmm. So I've lived here it's been over 40 years. So I'm kind of giving away my age too. So, so it's great to be here, man. So I'm glad.
Yeah, man, you're good. You're good. You don't need it. I had a guy on episode 80. I forget what it was. It was on July 16th. It was on the 75th anniversary of the first A-bomb testing in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and I got on a former nuclear weapons physicist from Lawrence Livermore. He was 86. He was telling me stories about walking to school. I was 11 on 9/11. I was like, I remember being in math class and hearing about it. And he was like, I was 11 when they announced that the war ended because we dropped atomic bombs. And I was like, you are old. And so you're good, man. You're not as old as Sam. Well, yeah.
That generation.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. That what they went through and all the changes that they saw.
Oh, yeah.
And then to be alive now, to see the wall come down, Berlin Wall.
Oh, yeah.
See the fall of communism, Soviet Union. It's historic to live, to be an Terry, right? Because he's in his 80s.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's amazing.
Yeah.
I hope I can live that long too.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I hope I do. Yeah, it was crazy. It's crazy because he gives tours at some nuclear weapons museum. I mean, dude is completely coherent, I lost my grandma at 86, and her mind had been going for years. But here's this guy, just sharp as a tack. I mean, if you had got rid of the video and just listened to the audio, you'd have no idea. Yeah. But yeah, man. So but yeah, it's I read a comment of yours on a forum, and I thought it sounded cool. And I didn't actually think you'd email me back. There's about a 95% failure rate when I email potential guests. Or not, I wouldn't even say failure rate. I'd say 95% just non-responsive. And then of the 5% that do respond, maybe 1%, so 0.05% actually do the podcast. So I'm always, it's weird to hear you say, thanks for having me on. I'm like, thanks for doing it. But yeah, it's, you were there in the 1991 riots, and, yeah.
It's actually 92, I think.
92. I'm a moron.
Yeah,
I was 2 years old.
I get those years confused too, 91 and 92.
What was 91? I feel like something was in 91.
A lot of stuff happened in LA in the 90s. We got earthquakes, we had the forest fires, we had like late 80s. We had 2 large earthquakes.
Yeah.
And then we had the riots.
Yeah.
It was not a good time.
Yeah. Whatever. So you were there, and I made sure beforehand. I was like, hey, that term's not offensive to you, right? And you were like, no, not at all. So, because I had some people at work, I was telling one of my friends about my upcoming guest, and I was like, yeah, man, he was one of the original rooftop Koreans, and he was like, oh, that's so cool. And there was some lady buying something, and she was like, that is so offensive. And I was like, I haven't actually checked that with him, because I don't think it is. And you were like, no, it's not to me. And I was like, I don't, because when I say it to me, it is the most some of the guys I've had on here that were in spec ops and stuff, they've used that term before, but it's as it's admiration and respect. When one of the guys is like, our sniper was Korean, and we call him the rooftop Korean because he would always be looking over us. So
Cool.
yeah. So, but yeah, enough of me talking. I want to hear your story. I read your comment on YouTube, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone. So, walk me through it. Walk me through your experience.
All right, I'm gonna hit a couple of comments on that video too.
Sure.
That I want to discuss as well. But yeah, so I was 19 years old. It was 92, and I mean, I think just a little bit about the background in terms of myself, and then I'll go into the background of what was happening in LA at that time. So, you know, when you think of like an Asian person, you think of someone who came here and is, you know, working hard, sends their kids to school and does all the things, the right steps, so that second generation can do better. Well, you have those Asian kids, and then you have the other Asian kids, the kids that were like knuckleheads, right? That they got into trouble, that couldn't, like, you know, was just always getting into stuff, right?
Sure.
And this was like the 80s and 90s. So I grew up with a lot of hip hop culture, right? Because this is LA. So I was listening to a lot of rap music and stuff. So, you know, a lot of my friends were in groups. That's all. I'm just leave it at that. We're in groups. And this is back like 80s, 90s when the movie Colors came out, right? So there's a lot of Crips and Bloods, a lot of like drive-bys. And that was just like the culture. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, gang signs, all that. So I, you know, that's kind of the culture that, you know, that was in LA at that time. Hip hop was coming up. And then, you know, young guys like me, you know, we're listening to a lot of, you know, hip hop, and we kind of grew up in that era. So for us, I mean, I think when the riots happened, you know, it blew me away the fact that, like, you can see social order just break down so quickly, right? Because it happened, I had to go back through the timeline because it was so long ago. And I had to do, and I actually periodically do, you know, searches on YouTube for videos and stuff just to kind of see what it was back then. I did that back in 2011, but yeah, it happened on a Wednesday, and yeah, I remember I was at work. I worked in a suburb. Actually, I don't live that far from where I used to work. It's in Alhambra, which is east of downtown LA, and it had the verdict came out on an afternoon, right? So this was Rodney King. Came out with the verdict on Wednesday afternoon, and that's when Florence Normandy blew up by about 3 in the afternoon, 3-4 in the afternoon. Late afternoon started blowing up. There's people out in the corner, and that's when that trucker Reginald Denny got stopped, right? And then he basically, I mean, he got beat. He got beat really bad.
Yeah.
From there, it just kind of blew up, right? So that was Wednesday, and then Thursday is when it really started picking up steam, right? And they're rioting in areas where basically it's like, what? I mean, I lived in Hollywood. You know, we lived over by. When people think of Hollywood, they think of like, man, you lived in Hollywood. Like, no, man, I lived in the working class part of town of Hollywood, right? So if you know a place like Hollywood, like, you know, there's always, you know, misconceptions. But yeah, people were right. And there's you probably don't remember, but there's a store called Circuit City, and Circuit City was kind of an electronic place, kind of like the Good Guys.
I remember it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So basically, this Circuit City was over on Sunset, like not that far from my house, but they were looting that place, and that had nothing to do with Rodney King. And there's actually, I think there's a footage where the guy's holding a big TV. And the reporter's pointing a camera at him. He draws out a revolver, and he points at the camera, lady and the cameraman, right? He drops the TV, and he's running down the parking lot. It's crazy. And this was on like, this was happening was on Thursday, because we just started seeing everything on Thursday. So it started on Wednesday, and then from there it blew out south, right? So Koreatown is north, Florence and Normandy, but there's a lot of Korean businesses that were owned south of that, right? So you're talking about like, you know, South Central, Compton. And a lot of these business owners didn't have insurance. So when they went up in flames, they pretty much lost everything, right? So that was it was starting to pick up steam on Wednesday. And Thursday is when it just went full blown. That's where you see basically all the black smoke coming up from the city. And then you see the news, you know, feed in terms of what's going on. And then at the same time, we didn't, like my family, we didn't have any stores in Koreatown. My dad we had a store over on Florence and Alameda, which is east of Florence and Normandy. It's further east. And then we had that store, but we sold that store 2 years ago. So we're done with that. And then a lot of my uncles, you know, they had, you know, independent businesses that didn't require like a shop. So I'm watching all this happen on Thursday. It's happening on, you know, TV. You see the cars going. And then my buddy calls, right? And I'm not going to give his name because it's for privacy reasons, but he calls and his brother has a sound shop. over on Hoover in Washington, which is over by the edge of Koreatown, and it's called Sound Expo. And then from there, there was another shop, and then his sister-in-law worked at a beauty salon, and then his brother had a photo shop, and then his other sister-in-law, she had like a makeup type of place. So Thursday, I mean, I'm watching all this happen, and then I was at work, and they're telling me at work, like, man, you better go home because you live in like they're starting fires in Hollywood too, and so I was like, okay, so I drive home, and then this is pre-cell phone, so my buddy calls me in the evening and says, hey man, do you see what's going on TV? I was like, yeah, it's happening. And he goes, okay, well, they're gonna probably, my brother's shop because it's in that area. So I was like, okay, all right, I'll see you in the morning then. So he comes to my house, it's like 7:30 in the morning. So he rolls up, and then he has not like rich Asians, right? It's like poor Asians. So he got like an 82, 84 Toyota, Corolla, 4-door, like a beat up gangster car, kind of all burgundy, and had like fence stuff. So he pulls up, so I hop in, right? And I was 19, and when I was 19, I bought my first shotgun, which is a Remington 870, right? So I took that. And I remember leaving that morning, and my dad, I mean, Koreans, the older generation, they served in the military for 4 years. So I was 19, and I'm walking out of the house with a shotgun, and my dad's there, but he doesn't stop me, because he knows where I'm going, right? Yeah. And he just tells me to be careful out there. So we go out, and we head over to this stereo shop, and then this was there, and he's got some of the guys, the employees, and some of the employees were Hispanic, and they're up on the roof, and they have like shotguns, and I have long guns on the roof. So we show up, and then we're like, hey man, what's going on? It's like early in the morning. We're like, yeah, they're boarding up the windows, right? And they're just probably getting stuff, moving stuff out of the way, because it's still burning. You can still smell the smoke, and there's still fires that are going. And the thing is that they couldn't put out the fires because these guys were shooting at the firefighters. It was crazy, So that was like a first too. I mean, it was like they're trying to put out the fires, but they're shooting at the firefighters. So they're moving. They have a pretty high-end sound place for everybody, rappers and stuff would bring whatever. Guys would bring their cars, and they trick out their cars and stuff. So they're moving all the equipment out. And that day, Thursday, actually Friday, all day, we ran patrol. The older guys, like my dad's generation, they were on the rooftops, right? And they were basically protecting, right? But the younger guys, the ones that are like me, that I guess you can have kind of a rougher background. I don't know if he talks about this, but we actually ran patrol on that day. So on Friday, we basically, his older brother said, yeah, there's a white carload of, I'll be honest, that in that neighborhood where we were, there's a lot of Hispanics, and a lot of these guys were from MS-13, which is a Salvadorian gang, right? So they were basically cruising around doing drive-bys on. So that morning, there's this white car that went by twice, and it has this carload of guys. So, they told us, so we got in our car and we're out there, so it's kind of like, we're hunting these guys down, and, we didn't find them. We went, and we actually went over to a few other places, that, that were, they had their cars out and stuff. And we knew, my buddy, he knew some of the guys there. And then I also went to my other friends. He had a swap meet over on Western. His parents had like this indoor swap meet, but that place was pretty secure because they have those long iron, wrought iron fencing that goes up to about 8 feet, right? And then they had the steel roll-up doors, so that was all secure. But it was just that, and then we had to grab lunch, for all the older guys. So we went to the restaurant, and everyone's packed, so everyone has a sidearm, and everyone's picking up food, and it was just a crazy day, and then from there we went back. But we didn't shoot anybody. We didn't get shot at that time, but you can hear gunshots. And then when we heard the gunshots, we'd roll over there, right? And we'd find out like, who was it? Was it, we're looking for particular cars? Was it this? Was it that? But and then Saturday is when there was the protest parade. That's when I read there was like a whole bunch of us. They said it's like 30,000 Korean Americans came together, and then we started walking from Olympic and Western. It's a boulevard. It's the largest street. And then from there went all the way down to, I take that back. It was on Normandy because there's a park there. So from there we walked all the way to Vermont. And from Vermont we went up north to Wilshire. So it was basically that, and it was pretty much over by then. because the National Guard came out. They came out by Friday, I think, afternoon. Friday late afternoon, and they came out, and then by Saturday it was safe enough where the Korean radio told everybody, like, hey, we're gonna get together and walk. And there's like 30,000 people that showed up. I didn't even know about this. My dad is the one that had to tell me. He's the one that he woke me up in the morning on Saturday when I got back, and he was like, hey man, there's a protest thing that we got to go to. So he took me and my brother at that time, he was like 11. My brother was 11, I was 19, so we both went. But yeah, it was surreal, And I was doing some homework on this, and there was a comment one of the YouTubers wrote about the security guard, and there was a video back in 2011 that I found and I showed my wife, and I can't find it now, but it was basically an older security guard guy standing, and this actor just runs up and shoots him in the head. So I don't know if that was pre-riots, before the riots happened, or I don't think it was after, because we would have known about it after, but it must have been before that happened, because there was a lot of tension between the Black community and the Koreans at that time, sometimes part of the Hispanic community, but mainly, it was the gangs that were a problem down there, MS-13. But with the Black community, we had a problem with that because maybe I think it was several months ago, there was a shooting of a 14-year-old. Her name was Latasha Harlan. And you can Google that, but she was shot by a Korean store. It's an older woman, and she basically shot her in the back of the head. Right? She had a handgun under the counter, shot her in the back of the head. But that's what kind of set everything off too, because what they didn't show in the whole video was this 14-year-old girl was a big Black girl, right? She was big, and she took candy bars and stuff, and the Korean older, she's like a grandma, right? She was like, hey, you gotta put that stuff in candy bars. She's like, I didn't steal this and that, and boom, she's wailing on the grandmother, right? Pounded her, right? So after she got pounded, I think the grandmother just kind of lost it. She's already fearful for her life. She pulls out the gun and boom, right? So because of that, when they went to court, the judge gave her 6 months of probation, right?
Yeah.
Which is okay, right?
Yeah, you shot somebody.
I don't know. I'm not a judge, right? But that didn't sit right with a lot of people. A lot of the Black community didn't think that was right. They only saw the part where she got shot, but they didn't see the beginning of it where she's just wailing on this woman, right? Yeah. So there was a lot of tension because of that too, and then also culturally because you have a first generation immigrants that come and the only opportunity they have in order to make it in this country was to start a business, and something that doesn't require a lot of communication skills, right? How much is this? 55 cents, $1, whatever, right? So a store is probably one of the easiest ways to to start making a living here. And at the same time, culturally, Korea is very homogenous. There really isn't a lot of different people. It's really different now, right? But they're really homogenous. So when a lot of my dad's generation, they came here, it's culture shock. You get all kinds of people, right? And then you got, they go into a Black community, right? And the culture is not, it's not, the Black community is the Black community. They have their own culture, right? To a certain degree, right? We're all American, but they have their own culture. And that was a shock for them too, right? And at the same time, a lot of these guys, like my dad's generation, they're educated. To college, and then they're here working at a store and 10, 12 hours a day, right? Disrespected, right? So that frustration builds on their part too. I went to college back in Korea, and here I am. I'm selling tortillas and bread and all these to these guys. What the? Yeah. So there's tension. Right?
Little pent up. Yeah. What's the term? Underemployed. It's where you have an engineering degree, and you're selling Cheetos, right? And then someone steals your Cheetos. Yeah. And
so there was a lot of tension that built up because of that. So that's another reason why some of the stores were burned. There was a lot of animosity about that. But then what happened afterwards was that the first MC Church, which is a big Black church in South LA, they got together with a lot of the Korean churches. So through faith, they connected and they basically rebuilt the community together, and they kind of there was a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of a lot of misconceptions, miscommunications out between the two cultures, and I think after that there was a lot of fence building, which is great. Because you fast forward almost 30 years now. We got hip hop back then. Koreans, they turned out and they gave us K-pop, right? So I don't think it's a fair deal. I'm not a big fan of K-pop.
That wasn't a fair trade. No, not at all. That's so insane though. I remember reading that comment, and you were like, it was like my brother or my cousin who had a Beretta, and I had a 12 gauge, and we were on patrol. And I remember reading that, and I was just like, because I was born in 1990, I just assumed that nothing happened before 1990. Like, I know everything happened, but I just assume my universe started on August 7th, 1990. And so to me, everything, granted, the riots were after that. Everything before that, I just assume happened, dinosaurs, Jesus, American Revolution, now we're here, right? That's how I condense it, right? I'm real intelligent, right? But it was weird reading that comment because it was like, oh, you were there. And it was like, oh, this was just a thing. Like, I know this sounds stupid, but like, it's especially growing up with the internet, you've seen everything has always just been through some YouTube clip, whether it's Tank Man in Tiananmen Square, whether it's Pearl Harbor, whether it's World War I with no sound. It's just weird that it's like, oh, you still exist, right? It was like, oh, you're a real person, you're there. Like, I had a guy on, Tony Tedeschi, who's a firefighter on 9/11 in New York. And it was just like, oh, whoa, you were there. But, yeah, that just seemed so absurd. It was just like, yeah, we rode patrol. And then I was 19, and I was like, man, when I was 19, I was getting ready to go to college. And was like, I would have, it's just, I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's just insane. Sorry.
It's, one, at that time, I guess, the 90s, the late 80s and 90s were a little bit more thuggish, we had a lot more gangs, and, things were a lot more rough. That's when crack came out, right? And that's when gangs really took off, and that had a lot of influence in LA, especially a lot of us growing up around that time, especially with the music, the culture,
Sure.
With that. So at that time, getting in a car and having a shotgun and with my buddy like that, it was like,
kind of cool.
I don't know. It's not something we thought about too much. Just like they're coming for us, right?
Yeah.
They're coming for us and for our family, for our friends, and the community is huge. It's not like we all know each other, right? It's huge, right? So, but at the same time, we all kind of banded together in a sense, right? Where we had to protect ourselves, and it caught a lot of people by surprise, right? And then I remember there was an interview, and it was a younger guy, and he made a comment like, I don't know why they're doing this to us. We didn't beat Rodney King, it wasn't us, right?
Yeah.
It's like, for you, it wasn't us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, to you, it's like, it's like, don't bring me into this. Like, I get you're mad. But this isn't me, it's like, they always, it's like, well, you're white, so your ancestors owned slaves. I actually found out, my dad looked it up. We actually went in and found out in all, like, the public records. My ancestors actually fought for the North in the Civil War. Like, actually fought for Lincoln against, to liberate slaves. So, yeah, for me, it's like exceptionally. I'm like, hold on, like, So I'm like, I get a pass. Where's my reparations? But it's weird seeing.
I gotta tell you something.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of white guilt. Honestly,
I didn't do anything.
Man?
I didn't do anything.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't have slaves.
No.
I mean, if your grandparents way down the line did, you had no say in it, right?
I know,
it's
right?
not like you said, you know what, I want to make that, and you're not trying to perpetuate it.
No, and I'm not defending it. I'm not defending it either. Not only that, I'm Irish. I can't. My family. So they were.
You were discriminated.
Irish need not. Irish need not apply. Right? It's.
Exactly. 100% free. Ellis Island. You guys were discriminated against.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
I'm a history buff.
Yeah.
I read a lot about history.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean,
Doesn't fit the narrative.
It's not a race thing,
No.
It's a social-economic thing,
Sure.
and
Sure.
it's like who's like me, and nowadays I think it's who's like me financially, economically, right? So this whole black-white paradigm that they're trying to put on us, it's BS.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a black president for 8 years. I mean, honestly, we couldn't figure it out then.
Yeah.
And then we got a problem now. I mean, seriously, who are these people that have a problem? You know what I mean?
I often think I'm like, where is all of this coming from? And like, not to don the tinfoil hat, but I mean, the more you think about it, if you wanted to destabilize a country, let's just say in a vacuum, you wanted to destabilize a country, and you're a foreign nation state. The one thing you would do is you'd get on Reddit or YouTube every day, and you would just go post a polarizing comment between the left and the right parties of America. Anything to just put that wedge and just push it farther apart. Because you see it on the news, you see it on YouTube videos, Instagram videos, but I haven't seen it in person. I work with an Italian guy. I have on my friend Aaron all the time, who's black, right? I have gay friends. I have Asian friends. I'm more far right, not far right, but some people say I'm far right. I have friends that are left. I would probably say they're far left. They're probably just moderate left. But we're still best friends. I have my buddy Ernie on this podcast all the time. Ernie was born in Mexico. He worked in the Obama administration. But I have him on just because you know what we talk about? We talk about in college when we used to drink together and play video games. So it's like, you see all of this in the news saying they're at each other's throats, but then I'm like, I haven't seen it. It almost seems like it's like someone's benefiting from this, and I don't think that's a conspiracy. I think that's just rational thought process. I feel like someone's benefiting from all this division. Who's benefiting? I don't know. Is it a foreign nation state? Is it insurance companies? Is it the gun companies? I don't know, but right? It seems a little odd.
So I work in an industry that deals with money, right? Mm-hmm. Lending, right? So I do all kinds of lending, loans, right? And the term you've heard of this, follow the money, right? Mm-hmm. That's adage. You've heard of that?
Yeah.
It's very true though. If you follow the money in terms of where that money goes and how things are financed, and what's being done, then it's pretty clear that there's an agenda right now to take this country over towards more of a socialist, Marxist type of environment. They're talking about UBI. Some guy posted about UBI. Like, hey man, I read the comment. Like, hey man, your son, your kids, in a socialist state, they can find a dream with some UBI. But if you take Econ 101, you find out that if you give everybody $1,000, I mean, nobody's $1,000 richer, right? I mean, it makes everything else more expensive.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, can you not thread these things together?
We've already seen it. We've seen it with early 20s, mid 20s Germany, right, where they had the wheelbarrows full of the Reichsmarks. What was it? 4.3 trillion Reichsmarks per U.S. dollar. What was Zimbabwe in the early 2000s? Didn't they get to 100 trillion per U.S. dollar? You can't. It doesn't. You can't just do that, right? It works. It works for a little bit. There's like a delay. There's like a weird. Yeah. There's like a delayed effect. But it's
and I'm sensitive to that because I'm about German history. I was actually born in Germany.
Really?
Right. So I was born south of Düsseldorf. Right. Okay. It's a small town. It's kind of an industrial town called Leverkusen. But I mean, Germany actually went through that. They went through that during the Weimar Republic when they went through hyperinflation. I mean, I don't know how that's going to work in modern days time. I mean, I think now digitally we just added another zero and everything will probably everybody be happy, right? I mean, I don't know how that's going to work, but I mean, what else is there at this point? Because if you look at what's going on financially in this country too, we have about, I don't know what the debt is now, but it's astronomical. We're never paying this back.
21 trillion, I believe.
21 trillion, and there's another 40 trillion of unfunded liabilities, right? I mean, who cares about these numbers anymore? I mean, does anybody really care?
What does it mean? Yeah, what does it mean? It's I've listened to more audiobooks, more about intelligence agencies and asymmetric warfare and weird things we would do to fight the Soviets, weird ways that the Chinese are attacking us right now. It seems that nothing's off the table. It's not just bullets and bombs. It's all sorts of stuff. I've slowly, I'm kind of building, not actively, but I'm like subconsciously and passively, I've been like developing my own hypothesis that I think the single most effective weapon the United States has ever created is not a stealth bomber. It's not nuclear tipped warheads. What it is debt. Because we're not paying that back. But if you can, just like the UBI, if you can sort of fake it for a little bit before the debt man comes knocking, well, if you can get, say, China to pick up $10 trillion of debt, all right? So now it's on paper, we owe you $10 trillion. Okay. And then what do we do with that? We turn that into, what is it, like realpolitik? We build 900 F-22 fighters. We buy 5,000 Abrams tanks. We buy 100 years of ammo and dried food for the troops. We buy oil instead of using our own oil back home where we have it for reserves. Why are we doing all this? Well, when they finally check the card and go, all right, you guys got to pay your tab. Well, we're not going to pay it. And okay, so what's the next natural step? You send your collectors. How are you going to send collectors for $10 trillion when the people that owe you the money have a $10 trillion defense industry, right?
It's
Tony,
yeah.
you give me $1,000 and I go buy a rifle and 500 rounds of ammo, and then you come knocking, you go, where's my $1,000? And I go, I don't know. Get out of here. And you're like, oh no.
Right.
But that's a different episode for another time. That's my hypothesis, that the U.S. debt is our weapon. But yeah, that's kind of a taste of this podcast. I just go off on the rails. But
I think it's cool, man.
Yeah,
I think it's cool. You touched on a lot of different things. That's great.
Yeah, it's I have to, man. If I break it into one specific thing, I know I'll just quit. I'll just shut it down. I'll get so bored of it.
Yeah.
It has to just be whatever. I mean, yeah. It's the only way I can stay sane. But man, it's one thing I have noticed is, so at work I've actually had friends. I'll have like 5 guys, right? We'll all get our phones and I'll like, go to my podcast and they'll pick it up and I'll be like, subscribe. So I started this podcast on December 12th, 2019. I got to get to 1,000 subscribers before I can make money. That's the holy grail. Right now I'm at 605. Whatever the number is, I think it was around 500. I had all 5 subscribed, right? It didn't go up at all. So as the day went on, all these girls would come in drunk, buying liquor. We'd get them to subscribe. Probably 15, 20 people subscribed, and the number went up 1. Over the holidays, I would get all my family and cousins. I'd be like, everyone subscribe right now. They'd all subscribe. I'd get like 2. And that's
it's YouTube algorithms.
It is, and and it's because up before that, when people would say they're getting censored or suppressed, I'd be like, dude, that's just an excuse because you don't create good content, right? It's not my fault, it's YouTube. Now I'm going crazy, and I can't help but think it has something to do with the fact that there's a big American flag. I have on veterans, I have on guys like you who kind of just say what it is. They're like, no, this is what happened, this is who robbed me, this is, I didn't have anything to do with it. But that doesn't fly. That doesn't fly with YouTube. It's right. They're fine.
Because you like America.
Yeah, it's because I'm right. It's because I'm white.
Because you love the country.
Yeah, it's sorry, yeah. Right? It's and it's. I had on Brigadier General Robert Spalding, who was in Obama's National Security Council, and he wrote a book called Stealth War. It's about China, and I had him on in August, and he's going to come back on in October. But you know how in the CCP they banned the image of Winnie the Pooh because they said it looks like Xi Jinping.
Yeah, that's Xi Jinping, right?
Yeah. So Brigadier General Robert Spalding is going to come on again in October, and he brings up Xi Jinping in his book, Stealth War. Just kind of like he's like, he just kind of says it kind of offhanded, but it's clearly not offhanded. Of all characters he could choose, he choose. So I got a big Winnie the Pooh shirt, and I'm going to wear it next time I have him on. But like, it's just little things like that, right? Where you can't do that, right? There really is wrongthink. Like, it's becoming real. That you can't say certain things. You can't call it what it is. You can't, having on... I tried to run an advertisement on one of my videos just to get more people coming. And I remember so I chose like my most viewed video. It was Dale Comstock, Delta Force. And he was talking about one of the operations he was on. And after like 48 hours, I got a response from like Google Ads, and they said I couldn't run it because it promoted violence and white supremacy. And I was like, what part of it?
That's BS.
I was like, what part of it? Because a lot of it we just talked about his upper. Actually, Dale was born in Germany, and we talked about that. And
you should get it filtered.
What?
Get it filtered and make yourself look Asian or something.
Right, I know, right? I should.
Like camera filters.
I just need to get a black friend, and I'll say everything off camera.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll say everything off camera and just get him to repeat it. They won't dare censor him, right? But Dale talked about at one point. He talked about. I was like, Dale, what was your first confirmed kill like? And he told me, it's like, oh yeah, no, I remember I engaged, pulled up, fire. It's like it wasn't much. It was the adrenaline of the moment. Just kind of went on. YouTube cited that part of saying that was promoting violent content and white supremacy, because Dale, on a Delta Force operation in Acid Gambit in '89, shot someone, a combatant. I don't know how to play this game.
Because part of the agenda is to demasculinize.
That is 100%. That is 100% part of it.
So that's part of the agenda. So you can have a video of, I don't know who this one rapper is, but it's This Is America. He had I still see the image where he had a guy in a bag and he shoots him. That's okay, right?
Childish Gambino.
But someone talking about bullying, narrating it is not okay.
Childish Gambino.
Right? So the visual is okay, but narrating, I mean, it's just really.
You can't do that, right? You can't. Do you remember when Trump retweeted that? Do you remember when Trump retweeted that GIF like 2 years ago? And it was just some stupid. It's Trump golfing. And then someone superimposed when Hillary was walking up the stairs to Air Force One, and she tripped and fell in.
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, I'm not. I've voted on both sides of the aisle. I don't have any agenda. It was a stupid. Yeah, it was a stupid. It was just a stupid little gif, right? It was like fourth grade humor. Ha ha. She got hit with the golf ball. Ha ha ha. Twitter flagged Trump for promoting violence because he retweeted that. Meanwhile, that comedian, who was that girl that tweeted that picture of her, and she had a rubber...
Right. She had the head of Trump.
Holding the decapitated head of Trump?
But that's okay.
That's okay.
Right?
And the thing is I agree, though. I do think that's okay. I think it's extremely offensive, but I think it's the First Amendment. So, Childish Gambino song, shooting the guy in the head, that woman holding Trump's rubber head, distasteful? Right. Sure. Gross? Sure. Violent? Sure. Offensive to me? Sure. I think that's still free speech. So I think that is okay. But let me be okay too, right? Let me tell my thing, and Dale shooting somebody in the head on a military mission.
Well, I think the move now is to have Facebook and Twitter investigated by the FTC, right? Because if they're just content providers, right, without policing their content, they're no longer arbitrary, right? They're actually, they can be considered, what do you call that? I guess non-biased.
Platform versus publisher?
Right.
Isn't that
right? So there's a whole, that whole line that they're crossing now. So, and I see it too. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Alex Jones I think he's really off the wall.
He's funny. He's funny, but I'm with you. He's funny. He's not my news source.
Right. He's not. But I mean, you need to give a guy like that, a pedestal. You got to give all these guys like a time, to talk, right? Because it's a republic. We have free speech, right? And I don't know what it is with people. I mean, I grew up with sticks and stones.
But words can never hurt me. Yeah. What happened to that?
So. It's basically George Orwell's trying to control speech, right? I mean, they're trying to control what you can say and how you can say certain things, right? And I mean, we need more people to just say, that's not cool. I'm not with that program, right? Yeah. And I get to say what I want to say outside of being a threat, saying fire, in front of lobby, right? No, but I should be able to express my opinion. So if this guy is, he's a jerk, I should be able to say, I don't like this guy. He's a jerk. Why do I have to be nice to him, right?
Yeah. You have to give people like that. It's Ed Snowden said it he did a second Joe Rogan interview. He did one last year in 2019, and he did one 2 days ago. And Ed Snowden, like him or not, he's very well spoken. He has a great book called Permanent Record. But he So, but I just watched one little like 10-second clip yesterday, and he was talking on Rogan, and he was saying he's like, you can't. He's like, let's just use an example: censoring Nazis. And he goes, no, I don't mean a white suburban guy voting for Trump. That's not a Nazi. Just because you don't like someone doesn't make them a Nazi. He goes, real life, goose stepping, shaved head, hate anyone but white people Nazis. He goes, those people exist. They're despicable, but they exist. He goes, when you kick them off your platform, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, they don't go away. They go onto their own forums, and that is where extremism festers. It's a lot like, I have a biology degree, it's a lot like the Galapagos Islands, right? What happens? There's a land bridge, or through some way or another, a bird or a turtle gets out there, and then it gets cut off for 100 million years. It bubbles into its own evolutionary branch that looks nothing like anything else because it's cut off from the rest of the world. The rest of the world's evolving and everything's intermingling and breeding, but then you have one thing on this secluded island, and they just evolved so they could crack nuts and get the protein out of the nut, unlike any other animal in the world, because they were secluded. So when you ban these things from the internet, despicable. I mean, it is. The Nazis they're horrific. No one's doubting that. But if you ban that, they're not going away. If anything, you have now made them martyrs in their own eyes. You've now given them a chip on their shoulder. So instead of them not getting followers be how it should be, they go out there and they're just spewing hateful stuff. Everyone goes, man, I don't want to be around you. You're terrible. You're 1,000 years in the Stone Age. Leave them alone. They'll die off on their own. But when you kick them off and they go into a metaphorical, their mom's basement, right, or their own clubhouse, that's where it festers. And then what happens? What's the quote? When you cut out a man's tongue, you're not silencing him. You're just making everyone curious what he was saying. So now Alex Jones, who's screaming about interdimensional vampires sucking the souls out of kids, but when that is unilaterally banned by Amazon, Apple, Facebook, YouTube, does that not just make you a little more curious to go, well, what is he saying? And so now I go there, and instead of finding the real incendiary things he's talking about, maybe campaign donations or gun running, instead you are now just giving more oxygen to that fire, because now I'm going, so there are interdimensional aliens inside, right? And so now you're just making the problem 1,000 times worse, right? It's you ban it, you make it a lot. I went to private Catholic school for 12 years, and I can tell you the things that were banned are the things that we did a lot, right? It's just that's human nature. It's, I don't know how we got into this spot, but this is where we are now, Tony.
Yeah, so I think there's a push to move the country more towards like a socialistic, Marxist type of, I don't want to say government, but more of a system, right? And you can see that. I mean, my parents grew up during the Korean War, and there's a lot of anecdotal stories of what happened during the war, how it went back and forth, and, how basically civilians suffered, a lot of them suffered. And just some of the propaganda that was used, on just, regular civilians in terms of trying to get them to come up to the north, right, to be part of the communist North Korea. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the things that I'm hearing now is very similar, I mean, they're looking for like BLM, right? And they're looking for, they're not, I mean, anybody who does any sort of, superficial homework could find out they're not really about Black Lives Matter. They're not about that.
They're Antifa, Marxists.
Antifa is not anti-fascist. Those guys are the fascists. Those are the modern day churches.
They are.
I mean, it's really it's appalling to see that, because I don't know if they realize that. They're just like a mindless gaggle of like these. I call them, the 20, 30-year-old guys, right? Or people. But yeah, they're the modern day brown shirts. They're trying to instigate change through force.
Through violence.
There's no dialogue, right? They're tearing statues down. They're trying to revive what Mao did with Cultural Revolution, which is getting rid of the past. Yeah. So if you go to China, there's nothing historical in China. You know what they do? They tear down the historical stuff and they'll build it like new, and say this is the historical thing that we built.
Yeah.
If you want to see Chinese culture, you have to go to Taiwan. My wife is Taiwanese, so if you want to see Chinese history, Chinese culture, you go to China, Taiwan, and you can see what if China was democratic, right, and they became a republic rule, right, then they would emulate what Taiwan has right now, which is, I mean, they're getting up there, right? I mean, in terms of the PPE equipment and how they handle the virus, and what they're doing right now to counterbalance China's influence in South China Sea, so there's a lot of that going on. But yeah, if you want to see historical China, that's Taiwan. If you want to see something that's an aberration, that's the Chinese Communist Party, right? They basically totally screwed up like all the places in China that should have been done, and preserved, right? Historical sites and whatnot. I mean, it's all basically, and a lot of it was like, a lot of these local guys, local government officials. I mean, when you have a system where you got to lie to move up, right? You got to constantly lie to your yeah, everything's cool, and you're moving up. And it's like, there's really nothing concrete, right?
Yeah.
And the only thing that's kept that economy going was because they've been expanding, and we've been financing that, sending all of our manufacturing stuff over there, right? So
40,000.
That's why they're able to literally paper over all that mistake. But then now with what's going on there now with the floods, and how they got the virus, and just I think my feeling is that the Chinese people themselves, they're not happy.
No, not
I mean,
all.
they see what's going on, and I think there's going to be some sort of a groundswell that's going to build, where you'll have maybe perhaps fractionalization within China. If you look at Chinese history, they've always been like that. They come together,
the warring states,
right? Then they all fractionalize into little faction warlords, right?
Yeah.
So who knows?
Well, one thing the Chinese Communist Party always goes back to is a period in China called the Warring States, and that's where a lot of their current doctrine is based off of, is the Warring States period. And that's what Brigadier General Robert Spalding writes about. That's also what I think former Deputy of Defense under Reagan, Michael Pillsbury, in his book 100-Year Marathon, also writes about. All their stuff is based off. That is their doctrine. And it's the constantly lying, to me, is that just sounds like Chernobyl. Just everything's fine. I asked him, everything's fine. I asked him, everything's fine. I asked him, eyeballs are falling out because radiation poisoning. He's not a patriot. Just shut up. And it's just ignore it all. And then 15,000 Roentgen.
I was in elementary school when Chernobyl happened.
Oh, yeah?
I was in 6th grade.
Were you in Germany?
5th, 6th grade.
Were you in Germany?
Yeah. And there was a time when AIDS came out. Like, what? It was like the 80s were kind of weird, Yeah. We had like a nuclear plant meltdown. We had like this new disease that was developing. It was just...
That's true. Maybe that's good to look at, is to keep it in perspective, right? Think of like 80s, Chernobyl, AIDS. We have Russia and America going at it with 70,000 nuclear-tipped warheads pointing at each other.
Yeah.
Reagan announcing the Strategic Defense Initiative, lasers in space, and we got through it. So that gives me hope that we'll get through the 2020s.
Well, from what I've read, is because the leadership in the Soviet Union, especially Gorbachev. I mean, he knew what was happening.
He knew it was coming,
and then Yeltsin too. And then Yeltsin came after. They saw the writing on the wall.
Oh yeah.
But we screwed them, right? Because you talk to anybody from Eastern Europe, they'll tell you the Soviets, they needed help.
Yeah.
And they reached out to the Americans hey, listen, we're gonna implode, so we need to get some capitalistic ideas and stuff. But we screwed them in a way, right? American companies went there and we kind of took advantage of the situation. And then what ended up happening is the same guys that were running the Stasi, not Stasi, that's East German, but the KGB, they actually became the industrialists, right?
Yeah, the oligarchs. Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah,
they became the oligarchs.
That's one thing we did in the late 80s, is we actually made sure that all bank loans would get denied to anything that was going over there, because we just said kill them at the currency source. No new lifeblood, no new oxygen. Just let them suffocate. One thing we did was we found out that they were we found out that they were stealing schematics from a Canadian defense industry, which was American subsidized. Fancy way of saying we found out they were stealing American defense secrets. Nothing new. And instead of slapping him on the hand, what the CIA did was they said let it keep going. But what the CIA did was now it gets all sexy. The CIA went and they placed their own, and this is in a book called Dead Hand. We went in and we put our agents in there, and we sabotaged the things getting stolen so that they would work for a little bit, just enough that you'd go, okay, it works, and then leave.
Right.
Things like oil refineries, things like stuff that would run train routes into schedules, just enough that they would leave it, and then there'd be some Arctic oil station, and everything would spin out of control and explode. But the entire thing, it wasn't to kill people, it was to just kill their economy. And the largest, before the Halifax explosion of the early 1900s, the largest non-nuclear explosion ever seen from space was from one of these oil refinery plants that blew up from something we sabotaged that they were stealing, because we were like, let them have it. To the point where Reagan was actually notified. There's a flash from space. We think it's a nuclear thermal pulse, and they had to bring Reagan in and kind of read him in. They're like, no, we're just being super sneaky. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, but it's on that note. Nothing is off the table from blowing up oil refineries too. I've asked the Delta Force guy about this, and he kind of laughed at me. But do you not think that there could be foreign? Because this is another thing you dropped in your comment in YouTube was like, we've seen Marxism before, and that's why we're so against it. This isn't the 1992 LA riots where it's kind of just burning and looting. There's absolutely a political undertone to it, right? They're running in. They're using a battering ram of saying Black Lives Matter and the Orange Man is a fascist. But there is absolutely
guys are getting on planes. They're getting on planes and crossing state lines. I know recently in Portland, there was two girls from Redondo Beach, which is here in California, that were arrested in Portland. They're like 19 and 22, something like that, or 24, two sisters. And the reason why I know about them is because their dad works for a company that I have a really good friend that works at the same company. He's a financial planner. But yeah, these guys, it's not like the 92 riots where you had people coming on, for opportunity, right? I'm going to get me a TV. I'm going to get this, get that. It's not, right now it's let's just burn and just break stuff apart and just create mayhem, right? And it's like I think a lot of people know these are not people who live in that neighborhood.
No.
Right?
No.
So yeah, in the riots, I mean, there was an interview, I don't know if they still have it, but they asked, there was a Hispanic employee, like, hey, why are you standing with the Korean guys, right? I mean, go home. He goes, well, because, I work here, and two, I mean, this is the closest store my mom can go to. If this place burns down, she's got to take the bus another 5 miles down, right? So, I mean, there's some thought process in terms of, okay, we're not happy, we're going to protest, we're not going to burn down the store that my mom goes and buys milk and eggs, right? I mean, who thinks like that, right? That's real brilliant logic. If things are bad here, so we're going to burn down all the Wendy's and the Teslas and the Apple stores. That's really going to make these companies want to come bring their business back even further, right? Like, holy cow. It's well, and that's why a lot of the stuff that's happening, these aren't, in my opinion, these aren't locals that are.
No, they're not. It's proven that they're not.
Yeah, they're out of the area.
Wasn't it?
Right?
Was it May or June? Because I lived in Atlanta for 15 years, and I remember a lot of my friends were posting videos from their balconies of people riding and stuff. And one of them, it was the most beautiful red pill. She was posting a video, and she was like we stand with you. And the guy looked up at her and said, well, I know your kids are going to watch this, so I won't repeat the expletives, but basically, we know where you live, Whitey. And she was like, no, I stand with you. And they were like, we're coming back for you. And she was like, I stand with you. And I was like, oh no. It's like everyone saying we're marching for Iran. We LGBT for Iran. Dude, do you know what they do there?
That's what's another cringy thing I saw was when this guy, he's probably like a 6-foot black dude, who runs up to this short white girl and goes, I'm here. President of BLM told me that all white people have to kneel and say apologize. Oh, yeah. So she gets on. Did you see that?
I saw that.
And then some people were saying because she's apologizing. No, because she's probably scared. Yeah. And not only that, it's dude, it's just some stranger comes up to you and say, hey, some big dude, right? I mean, she's a skinny white, woman, right? I mean, what do you want me to do? Get on my knees and apologize? All right.
Well, I mean, it's there's one of two options there's one of two explanations, and they're both terrible. One, you're either scared, and so it's just out of fear, or two, you believe that you owe someone an apology for something you didn't do, for something that didn't happen to that person. They're both horrible options, but yeah, it's weird, man. There is but I don't think this can go forever. I think you can only push so far against sanity. I think you can only censor so many people. And that's just, but that's just history in general. It's going to pop back. It's going to pop back in the opposite. It always happens.
Because Americans, I got to say, we're like the nicest people, right? I mean, if you think about it, we take in people from other countries that are war-torn, right? I mean, that's why we got a big Vietnamese population in Texas, right? Because of the Vietnam War, they all went to Texas, right? I mean, you can only, in America, you can only push Americans so far, right? I mean, we want to be cool and everything, but at a certain point, we're like, no more. That's it. This is the line in the sand.
Yeah. Hey, we stayed out of World War One. Minus the Lend-Lease program. We stayed out of World War One, and then you bombed our Hawaiian bases. So, we went and threw 1 million men at the beaches of Normandy, made Hitler shoot himself, and then dropped 2 nukes on the sovereign nation of Japan. Like, just don't push us, because it will come back, right? It's like George.
I think most people are lying, and you can see the Korean, Korean people during the '92 riots were like that too. I mean, these are spectacled-looking gentlemen. They look harmless, whatever, but they're up there with, and it's not like they're trying to be hard or anything or trying to flex.
It's just the thing that needed. It's just the thing that needed to be done. Yeah, it's just. When the time called, they stepped up. It was, so one thing I did is I went on the subreddit. Do you use Reddit? Are you familiar with Reddit?
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to the subreddit Roof Koreans, and there's a 10,000 person subreddit about Roof Koreans, and
wow.
So I asked them to post some questions. I actually got some questions that they want me to ask you. Would you be so kind to answer them? There's nothing bad or anything.
No, I'm.
You're good with it? All right. And yeah, I know. Yeah. So some person said I have several, so I'll just do it in parts. So the first person, Furioso86, shout out Furioso86. As a Korean American during the tumultuous time, what was their personal experience with sentiment towards the Korean community? Because LA being generally very multicultural and Koreatown being in the center of the city, it must have been a mixed bag of both good and bad. So what was their experience? Yeah. What was their personal experience with sentiments towards the Korean community?
That's a good question. I think it depends on which generation you ask, right? So at that time, I was 19, right? So I was, I'm first generation Korean here. Came here when I was 6, right? So raised here, right? And then my parents, they're much older, right? And then my brother was born here, right? So it depends who you ask that question to, right? So, before the riots, like in my world, I was good. I didn't have any problems with any sort of, race. I grew up in Hollywood, and we had a multicultural, neighborhood. I had, Salvadoranians, Mexicans, we had Armenians, we had blacks, Peruvian blacks, we had Jamaican black, we had Samoans, Koreans, Chinese, Filipinos, kind of spackle of Vietnamese. It was just a whole bunch of different people, right? So, culturally speaking, I felt American, right? I grew up in the 80s. I watched MTV, did all the stuff that I guess, you do as a kid growing up,
sure.
In the 90s. But I was more on the more colorful side. It's probably the best way I could put it.
Sure.
So I got into a lot of trouble, right? So from my point of view, I think there wasn't a problem. So when that happened, and then the shop started burning, that's when it really, it felt real, because I knew there was always some undertone between the Black and the Asian community, especially with my dad's generation. And you can see it in movies like Spike Lee had a movie called it's not Fight the Power. There was a Spike Lee movie that came out. It was an old movie, but in it he had a Korean market store owner, and in the movie I forgot. I think it's Fight the Power. I think it's that. I gotta look it up, but it was basically a movie, and it was in the black neighborhood, the Korean store, and this is before the riots, right?
Yeah.
So something happens, and I think they went off, and then he's like holding a broom, and he's like, swinging at these guys, like, you're black, I'm black too,
Yeah.
So, so and then the guy has a thick accent, right? So he just came from wherever, like maybe a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
But I think it depends who you ask. But for me, after that happened, I looked at hip hop a little differently too, because I grew up with NWA, Ice Cube, right? And then Ice Cube had a song, right, that depicted Asians, like Koreans, in a negative manner. And after that, I was like, I'm done with Ice Cube. I'm not listening to him anymore, right?
Yeah.
But growing up, it was just like, okay, we had this, I saw it more as a friction between the older generation, like my dad and them, right? I mean, we kind of understood like the culture better, right? But at the same time, it didn't sit right with us, with what happened, right? But in the end, I think just like it smoothed over, so like anything else, given enough time, things kind of smooth over a little bit, and then as one generation gets older, they kind of learn, to be a little different. And then, we're kind of helping with that transition too, because they're seeing us grow, and I have kids now, right? And they're seeing them, and, it's like I guess you can say any immigrant story of any group that you have in America, right? Whether it's the Italians, the Irish, Koreans, Chinese, or whoever, the first generation that comes, there's always a struggle, right? Trying to fit in, trying to assimilate, right? And then in that struggle, I don't know about other families, but I know in our family, there's a lot of friction, because there's a cultural clash between me and then our parents' generation, right? We're trying to be American, they're trying to retain the old ways of being Korean, so it's not anything new, but it's just a little different dynamic because it's modern now, right? Versus like you read about the Irish at the turn of the century, this is more, more modern. I think the veins are still similar in terms of struggles and the hurdles that every immigration group goes through. And then, once they kind of become more Americanized, that's when you see like the kids change, right? And then the kids, they do different things, right? Become cops, right? Firefighters, go into politics, business, whatever, and that's where they become more Americanized. But that transition needs to happen. And there's always, I've seen in my, my readings of the past, there's always a friction, some point that they go through, and before they become, I guess you can say, more assimilated, more Americanized, right? They kind of, fit in with the culture. So
yeah,
I hope that answers that question.
I think it does. There's always like there's always a growing period. I mean, I moved around a lot as a kid. I was in like a different school every like 4 years, and that sucked. But yeah, I could point to that. Yeah, your first. I think that's probably why I can talk to anyone for like podcasts now. Is because I just got used to it. Where I was like, it didn't matter if it was New Hampshire, Arkansas, Maryland, Maine, Georgia. I was just like, there's just going to be this like grace period, and I just started to accept it. And so I vividly remember in like multiple different states over different years, I have like multiple memories of like the first recess or the first wherever high school lunch, where it's just like, I'm the new guy here, and it's just like, suck it up, like it's gonna suck, so just start talking to people and get it over with sooner than later. And then sure enough, there's gonna be some other new kid, and it's all gonna be pointed at him, and then whatever. It's, it was nothing against me, it was just, that's just what it was. It was just, it's, and I think it probably takes place on a much bigger scale with entire cultures, right? First generation immigrant, second generation clash with their own parents, but it's like it drops. It's almost like a drop of dye landing in water. At first, it's like boom, and then it starts to just mushroom out, and then it all disperses into a homogenous. I don't know why I felt the need to comment on your answer, but yeah. Next part of that from the same guy. Knowing that Koreatown and Korean-owned businesses were disproportionate. I really gotta go to the bathroom, Tony. Can you fill the air for like 30 seconds? Just.
Go use the headset.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody, stay tuned for 30 seconds. We are back. I don't know if Tony's back. Nope, just me. Thank you for your patience, everybody. I had to use the bathroom. I hope one day this podcast gets bigger. Get some cool camera equipment. I just got back, so we're good. It's I used to edit those out. Now I just don't care. Now I'm just like, you know what? Go to the bathroom. Stay tuned. Whoever's listening, you can go to the bathroom too. It's cool. Part 2 of that question. Knowing that Koreatown and Korean-owned businesses were disproportionately targeted compared to other businesses, do they personally feel the looters had anti-Korean sentiment, or were they just opportunists? You kind of touched on that earlier.
Yeah, I think it's both.
Yeah.
After what, with Latasha Harlan's, and, just cultural differences, right? And that was the big one. But you talk about the everyday, because my dad had a store over on Florence and Alameda, which is more of a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, right? Okay. But we had, black customers come in from time to time, right? And it really depends. But there's always, I'm going to say this because I know I don't, whatever, but in that neighborhood, you have like certain black people that are very belligerent, right? They got an attitude, and it doesn't matter how you try to talk to them; they're just not going to hear it. Sure. Right. So, culturally speaking, like my dad's generation, they see that as an affront, and they're very offended by that, right? Sure. And you talk about a culture that's very masculine, right? Korean culture is very masculine; it's very patriarchal, right? So you take that and you take that affront. I mean, you're going to have friction, right? I mean, it's like, man, you dishonored me, right? By speaking to me this way and being this way. So, and then for that person, right? I mean, it could be black or Hispanic. They're just being them, right? They're just being how they are, right? So you have all these things where it just like it didn't mesh well, right? And so when it happened, I'm sure it was both parts. It was part of it was very opportunistic, free stuff, right? Free stuff, and the second thing is like free stuff and. Against these guys, I don't like them anyway.
Right? So two birds with one stone kind of thing.
But there's bright spots that I don't think the news covered. Where there was one article I read. There was a Korean store owner. It was a family that would. They're really, really close in terms of the community. So they would have like monthly barbecue, right, with the community. Stores like that didn't get affected, right? Because they tied themselves in with the community, right? And they knew who the people were. And so if a knucklehead came in, right, they knew who his parents were, right? I know who your mom is. I know who your grandma is. I know who your uncle is, right? He'll get you straight. He'll set you straight.
He's going to kick you,
without that connection, right, it's like, you don't have that tie. So it no longer becomes like, it's not our store. It's the store, right? It's the Korean store, right? It's not our Korean store. These Korean guys, it's those Korean guys, that Korean store, right? So because of that, that family that had that store, they were untouched. The black community came together for them in that neighborhood, right, and basically protect the store, make sure nothing happened. But the news doesn't cover stuff like that.
No,
because it's just
that doesn't make money. That doesn't make money. It's no one wants to. I've always thought about that, man. What if there was just a positive news network? What if there's just PNN, and they were just like, today we made headway against a new anti-cancer therapy, and here 10,000 people got drinking water, but no one, it doesn't lead. It's always got to be shootings and rapes, and it's like, man, what if it's just
like they said, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, like right, they say. Right. It's if it's peace, no one cares. That doesn't even rhyme. See, there's no good rhyme. It's yeah. This person asked a lot of questions. Part 3. What guns did they use to take up arms, and were they legally owned at the time? Were they afraid of police reprisals? So you talked about that. It was there's a Beretta, a 12 gauge. Why? What? Police? Excuse me, I'm having a stroke. Police reprisals. What about?
Yeah, that's a good question. But honestly, at that time, it didn't matter. There were guys like I wrote. There was on people can Google me and Google the past, but on Western and Noy Ninth, which is like near the west side of Koreatown, there's a gun store that's there in the plaza, And I've known that gun store because my one of my friends' family, they lived like a block away. Maybe one block away, and we used to go to that plaza to go eat and go hang out. There used to be a Korean gun store there. But that gun store basically gave out arms and shells. So you get it like a revolver or a handgun with a shell, and you'd be like, "Hey man, here you go. Bring it back, pay me when it's all said and done, and then we'll settle up, right?" So yeah, I'm sure a lot of these guns they weren't legally registered. There's no background check, right? It's just out there. And the types of guns that were out there, let's see, a lot of long rifles, right? A lot of hunting type of guns. I saw a Tech 9 out there. That's like I don't know if it was full auto, but I saw Tech 9. A lot of shotguns, a lot of Remingtons, right? And then this is the 90s, so it wasn't Glock, it was Berettas.
Yeah.
A lot of Berettas.
Yeah.
What movie? Lethal Weapon, remember?
Yeah.
Movie with Danny Glover and what's his name? I see his face.
Lethal Weapon.
You know what
that's Mel Gibson. Yeah, that's Mel Gibson, right? Yeah.
Danny Glover, Lethal Weapon. Yeah. 9mm Beretta, right?
Yeah.
It's a 9mm Beretta FS. Yeah. So that.
Yeah.
So those guns, a lot of 9s. But yeah, it wasn't like anyone brought out like a 50 cal or anything like that. I mean,
that's what you need. That's what you need, man. That's got me thinking now. I'm like, man, just seeing this now, COVID and all the riots. I'm like, man, if this podcast ever makes money, I'm going to make sure I have like an up-armored Humvee with like a 50 cal mounted on top, just in case. Because I've always thought about that. Like, man, you have a 50 cal, you could shoot through two stores.
You don't need to do that, bro. Just go on the rooftop.
Yeah, rooftop. I'm gonna come out there.
Just be rooftop American, man.
Rooftop American. I'm gonna come out there, man. I'm gonna be part of you guys. I'm gonna be like, I'm here. Rooftop American. Have you heard of Johnny Kim? He's like the all-American, I believe he's Korean. He was a Navy SEAL. He did 100 combat missions as a Navy SEAL. Wasn't satisfied with that, so he went to Harvard Medical School, got his MD. Wasn't satisfied with that, and now he just got into the American astronaut program. So he's the Navy SEAL astronaut, Harvard doctor. And he's awesome. But I watched a podcast with him, and I think it was Roof Koreans. I saw the joke, and it was like, he's Korean. If he goes into space, if he becomes part of like Space Force, he will have the ultimate rooftop. He will be the ultimate rooftop Korean. He will have the ultimate high ground, space-based orbital weapon. He will be Space Korean, the ultimate rooftop. If he has a kinetic bombardment, not even just any kinetic bombardment weapon, the ultimate high ground, the ultimate rooftop Korean. It's over. The game's over.
From the space station, right?
Yeah, exactly.
From the space station.
Get on top of the space station. You are the rooftop. You are on the rooftop of the world. I thought that was funny.
That guy would have been the guy that my parents would have been like, why can't you be more like John Kim, right?
Well,
why are you doing what you're doing? Why can't you be more like him? Look at him.
Yeah, I know. Like, why can't you do that? I went to the University of Georgia and graduated in 2013, but my Korean friend there, Sung-Yup Beck, he doesn't care. He's a physician now. He's a pharmacist, and he has a PharmD in it.
You were at University of Georgia. I was actually in Georgia for a summer. I was visiting friends over in Emory. I was Cobb County.
Yeah. I went to high school in Atlanta, and I went to the University of Georgia.
I love Georgia, man. People are so friendly there. I got on is it the MARTA?
Yeah. MARTA,
Yeah, I got on the MARTA, man, and it was so weird because when you get on the bus in LA, you just go find your seat and sit down. But I got on the MARTA, and I was shocked because it was in the morning. Everyone's saying hi, good morning.
It's a party. It's crazy.
It's like they all, but I didn't know them.
It's crazy. Yeah, dude, I lived there from 2001 till 2016. Well, UGA's in Athens, but yeah, man, I never had maybe it was just luck. I never had a problem, not once, not ever. It's fun. It's crazy. There's definitely a lot of shootings, but like I always remember MARTA is like we would get high school, we'd get we'd put vodka in water bottles and go to a Braves game. I always remember the best part of the night was going home on MARTA because it was just crazy. It was always just like it was insane. It was like a big party. There was no fear of ever getting shot. Maybe we were just young and drunk. I don't know. Maybe there was a real danger of getting shot, and I just don't remember it. I liked it. I still have a special place in my heart for Georgia. But my friend Sung-Yup, I can't even Seunjyhup. He went to UGA with me, and his parents were first generation, I think, from Korea, and they owned a laundromat, and he's a doctor. And I remember he always used to say to me, he'd be like, dude, you don't understand. He's like, I don't have a choice. I have to be a doctor. And I was like, yeah, man, I just like want to do it. And he was like, oh man, I have to do it. And so, yeah.
You had the parents, you had parents who like, look, I came in second place. Second place? That's the first place for losers.
that's the first.
Like, you didn't achieve enough.
You didn't get it. But that's, I feel that when I see, because he became a pharmacist and then went and got his MD afterwards. And I can only imagine it was like, PharmD, why not MD? But yeah, I remember asking him, I was like, what do you think about Johnny Kim? And then he was like, I hate him. Why aren't you Navy SEAL? Why aren't you Harvard? How come you're not astronaut? Like, I'm trying. Yeah.
I used to have, when I lived in Hollywood, in elementary school, I used to have this Korean neighbor, family friend. They had 2 daughters. And one of the girls was about my age. And it was always all I heard. Why can't you be more like her? She's getting an A. You got to be. Why? She's in this class. Why are you in that class? You know, it was just. And I think, you know, because for us, you know, Korean, a lot of Korean, education is really important. You know, and you know, when we came here, I was, you know, I kind of screwed up because I was in a highly gifted program when I was a kid, and then I, you know, rebelled. And then I had some stuff happen. My mom passed away, and then I just had a really a lot of friction with my dad. You know, so that was when I was like 14. So when I was like 19, at that point, I mean, my dad kind of considered me a man, and you know, we didn't really, you know, we didn't really connect a lot. I mean, I think a lot of sons and fathers, I see that. You know, it's in my generation. You know, I talk to a lot of Korean guys my age, and they all say the same thing. And it's because, you know, our parents grew up during the war, and things were really hard, you know, and they grew up during the war as kids. Yeah. You know, so they had to shine shoes, and things were tough, and, you know, there were rations, and you couldn't get stuff, you know. So when they come here, it's, you know, they have an opportunity. So they push us, right? They push the kids. Yeah. You know, like, hey, you really got to do this, you know, because then you have this better life and whatnot. So. Yeah. It
makes sense. I mean, yeah, you have that generation that grew up in the Depression, the Dust Bowl, World War II, literal Nazis. Yeah, I mean, I definitely see where they come from, where it's like, and then everything settles down, and you're like, oh my God, like, go out and get it while you can, right? Because everything's calm for a minute. They didn't know it was going to be 7 or 8 decades of peace and prosperity, relative peace and prosperity. Still things, Vietnam, Desert Storm, 9/11, sure. But, yeah, I mean, it definitely, go away. You can tell how jerry-rigged this podcast still is, because there are phone calls, emails popping up. One day I'll look back at it and laugh. But yeah, it's yeah, I think that's probably a pretty like basic thing for like all of human history, clashes between dads and sons. I mean, I feel like that goes back to, that's like, right, that goes back to every ancient script, right? It's, yeah, I think it's probably a lot more with Koreans. It's, how come you're not this? But I was lucky. I had 3 smart brothers. So
thanks for telling me about John Kim.
Yeah, I know, right? You're lucky, man. You're lucky, Johnny Kim. Yeah.
What's that?
I said you're lucky. Johnny Kim I think he's definitely, he's after your generation, but maybe he's mine. I think he's in his like mid-30s. Yeah, you're lucky. You're skirted.
He's after.
Yeah, you're lucky.
I'm glad he's not in the same generation.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Because my parents were perfect.
Yeah, why aren't you Johnny Kim? I wonder if his parents are like. I wonder if Johnny Kim's. Actually, no. I believe he had a terrible upbringing. I remember hearing him talk on a podcast. I think his dad tried to kill him and his mom, or something. It was like an alcoholic and pulled a gun on him, and they left.
It just, that generation, our fathers, you know, that like our parents' generation, they went through some stuff, you know, because one, they went through the war, and then my parents, they immigrated to Germany, right? Because there was an agreement between Germany and South Korea to bring labor over there, nurses. So it's like kind of a vocational program that Germany had. Oh, back then it was called West Germany, right? So West Germany provided this. So a lot of the Korean young, 20-year-olds that went there, to get, to go to trade, to work, send money back home. It's almost like a lot of Filipinos, they do that. They work and they send money back home. It's like a very, traditional normal thing, right? So, they go through that, and then, they have to learn a different language. And then if they come here, it's a whole different dynamic. In Germany, everybody looks, everyone's white German, right? I mean, now it's different. I think Berlin has like the largest Turkish population.
Well, yeah. Well, now
outside Istanbul.
Yeah, now
right?
It's Germanistan, but yeah, it's
because there's a lot of people from
yeah.
I mean that's another very like just homogenous culture where just everyone's white. So as Koreans that live there, like okay, like everyone's the same over here, so. But then you come to America, especially in LA, you're like, wow, you got everybody and anybody here.
Yeah, my ex-girlfriend in college, her dad was German and from Germany. This dude was like 6'4", blonde hair, blue eyes. He's like, you definitely can tell that there was like a eugenics program like 80 years ago. Because you're like that's yeah, it's like startling. You're like wow.
Yeah.
You're like wow. You are like the Ubermenschen. You're like I mean, probably props to you. I wish I looked like that, but it's you're like oh wow, it's very apparent. But yeah, I was gonna say summing up, he was whoever's listening to this is probably banging their head. They're like, just answer the questions. But whatever. I don't care. It's my podcast. All right, fine. I'll answer the questions. Fine, Tony. Did their post-Korean War history and upbringing, and in quotations, an anti-invader culture, a historical Japanese occupation from Korea, did their post-Korean War history and upbringing influence their decision to take up arms, risk their lives to defend themselves and their livelihood? So, did the fact that your parents fought or were after the Korean War influence you? It kind of sounds like it did, because you said you grabbed the Remington and your dad was like, be careful, right?
Yeah, I think it's that, and plus the older generation, they had mandatory 4 years of service, so that helped, for the older generation. But the younger guys like me, I mean, the guys are, I did a search on the article where there was someone who commented saying like this security guard that totally got killed, that was killed during the riots, was a young guy. He was like 18 years old and he had a few friends, and I know a lot of Korean guys that were a little on the rough side. I mean, we ran patrols. I mean, it's not like we all coordinated and we knew each other, right? But we all, we did what we did. And I mean, and the thing is like, my friends' older brothers, they knew who, they know how we were. And, my friends' older brothers weren't exactly, clean cut either. They were a little bit rough. They grew up around Hoover, Virgil. And at that time, the reason why they were like, some of them were like that is because this is another wave of Korean immigrants that came in the 70s. Like we came in the 70s, right? 1970s. And so you have a new immigrant group that shows up in LA. And then, the kids like, us, like I was in elementary school, but his older brother was in junior high school. They run into issues with different groups, right? Like, so you got the Mexicans, the Iranians, so they form their own group, right? So they form a group of friends and it becomes a gang, and, they get into trouble and stuff like that. But, guys like me, we basically, I don't know if you can say we used like, our background or what we knew, because we knew the streets and we knew kind of the neighborhood and, the different groups or gangs that were around. So we knew how to navigate through the streets. So I know I can't speak for others, but I know, we ran patrol that day, so, and then, my friend's older brother, he knew, I mean, and he basically told us, go here, go there, pick up lunch, go check on this, go do that. I mean, he was, telling us where to go and, giving us directions. He was about 8 years older than us, at that time. So, but he was behind and they had to stay behind and take care of the shop. So the younger guys, I mean, I'm not younger guys than me and, my buddy. I'm sure there's others around, because I think the article I read, the guy was young, the guy that died. I remember when we did the protest parade on Saturday, his brother was the one that was in the front of the parade holding a picture, and it was really sad, but he led that parade on Saturday, and I remember seeing that. But it was just running patrol, dude. I mean, I can't tell you, was I scared or was it this, or did we feel like we had to protect? I mean, we just had to get down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just all it was. It's like, you don't really think about it too much, right? It's like, okay, just go do your thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Yeah, we were actually actively looking for these dudes. We were trying to hunt these dudes down because there were, these guys would pile up in the car, and then there would be like 3 or 4 of these guys, and they would cruise around the block, and they would scope out different areas, and then sometimes they'll take pot shots at us, right? So you could hear gunshots like throughout Koreatown here and there. But then whenever we get there, we're always like maybe a few minutes behind, right? Because we're trying to trail where these guys are going, and but I think, thank God that it didn't come down to a gunfight between us and them, because then I guess the news would have been a lot different in terms of what happened, But yeah, it was, it's not just like, I don't know what you call it, but they weren't just rooftop Koreans, but they were like Koreans on patrol.
Yeah.
Running patrol and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not like,
Yeah, I think it's a general,
it was not like we're just, some of us, a lot of the older guys took a defensive position protecting the shop, but the younger guys like me, we're like, F that, I mean, we're gonna go hunt these dudes down and like, coming after us, right? And it's not like, you don't really moralize it.
No,
it's just a matter of like saying this is what, this is what we're gonna do because this is what's happening now.
I mean, but yeah, that comes down to just kind of general like masculinity. Because if you don't meet force and fire with force and fire, if like you let an alpha force come in and you capitulate, that just sets the precedent. That's just the dominoes falling. You have to meet it immediately. And if they've already drawn the line or made the first chess move by shooting that guy in the back of the head, you have to bring it back. It's how come we had to go to Afghanistan or Iraq? How come we had to kill 1.5 million people and destroy their countries and take their oil? I mean, you don't just knock down the Twin Towers and then us say, let bygones be bygones. Look, the brutal reality. Yeah. Why did we have to kill 150,000 civilians in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? You have to meet it, and it's terrible, and that's why war is hell. But like, you have to meet it equally. It's the only way. You have to meet it with an equal force.
Right, and the thing I tell because we do a lot of martial arts at home, and my kids too, and I've been doing martial arts for a long time, and I tell everybody this, and I teach it as well, which is, you have to, if any time you get into a confrontation, you gotta let the other person know that they do not control the level of your response, right? Yeah. So if they physically assault you or whatever, they're trying to be cute, they do not control the level of your response that you give back to them, right? Yeah. So I tell my kids that it's like whenever you get into an altercation or whatever, you gotta let your person know, like, listen, man, you can say whatever you want. If you're gonna assault me, just know that if you touch me, that the level of response that
it's not going to be proportionate.
You don't control that.
Yeah,
right.
So
just be aware of that. And usually that dissipates everything. Like, some people think about that, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
I mean, I remember growing up, my dad always used to tell me and my brothers, he'd be like, don't start anything, but make sure you finish it. It was just like, if someone hits you once, return it with 1,000 hits. Go nuts. Go psycho. Like, and create the precedent that you don't let that happen. It's a, you can still tell that that's where we are as a species, right? We're not some utopian spacefaring species, that we are still at this very primitive, where it's, whether it's military, we're still very much in this weird, like, sort of ape cognition, right? They hit you, you hit back. Like, that's where we are. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, you have to do that. It's if there's going to be an aggressor, you have to turn it up 10 times over and eviscerate them. That's just
human nature, and throughout thousands of years, it has not changed.
No, not at all. It's got better guns.
The only difference now, is that every generation after thinks they were that much smarter than the generation before.
That is, right? That's the standard.
Kind of, right? Yeah. But in reality, they just didn't have the technology or the information. But you take someone from the past and you pluck them and you put them into the future, they're gonna assimilate. They're gonna figure stuff out. I mean, that's just the way people are. Yeah. And that's why, going on the flip side of this is talking about racism, right? I mean, if you want to be honest about it, you're always going to have racism, and people are always going to maybe not call it racism, but a bias, right? Like, for example, like, was it Jesse Jackson says, like, yeah, we're still living in a time where if I'm in a dark, street, or I think he said this, when I'm in a dark street and I hear footsteps behind me, I look behind me, I breathe a sigh of relief when I see it's a white guy, not a black guy that's running behind me, right?
Sure.
I mean, but that's about it, right? I mean, and I think people still retain that, right? Because there's certain things that you fall back on in terms of what you know, of what you've dealt with, certain groups, people, right? And that's what you fall back on. But then that changes once you know the person, right? You get to know their name, their background, what makes them click, this and that. So then they become an individual, right? So then it's not racism and bias. They become a person and you relate to them like a person, right? But then before that happens, you always have a starting point of what you know of the group of people, right? Like, I'm Korean, right? So you probably like, oh, yeah, these guys probably like eating white rice. Yeah, it's true, we do, right? Because it's that's that, right?
I like white rice.
If someone says, hey man, you like eating white rice, I'm not gonna see that as an insult, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, that's insulting, right? Like, you don't eat white rice? I mean, like, what's the point?
Yeah, right, right, yeah. It's like, yeah, it's like white people, you don't like spicy stuff, and I'm like, no, I do not. I don't fuck that. Excuse me. I'm like, that's not offensive to me. Yeah. Got off on the rails again.
Yeah. Anyway. Right.
Yeah. No. I normally like the conversations. Just if you can't tell, they go way off into the weeds, and I let whatever happens. But I have to remember when I have episodes where people have like submitted questions, I gotta reel it back in, bring it back to the center line. It's difficult because I get so excited. That's what it is. I just get so excited. I start talking. Did the riots? Same guy, Furioso 86. He's got a lot of good questions. Did the riots, violence, and looting surprise them? What's their sentiments towards general faith in humanity in a large city like LA right now?
That's a good question. Wow. Yeah, it did surprise everybody, I think, because I don't think anybody in the Korean community expected stores to burn, right?
Yeah.
The last time LA had riots was back in the 1960s, the Watts riots, right? I mean, that was the last time LA had riots. So when this happened, I mean, it caught everybody off guard, especially, when they start creating fires. Not only that, but they start shooting firefighters. And it was just, that blew me away,
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't anything that we anticipated. Like I said, there was a lot of tension bubbling underneath that was already there, but this just kind of, brought it all to the surface, right? So in hindsight, no one should have been surprised as it unfolds and the world is shocking. Like burning down. What was the second part of that question? It was.
Hold on, I'm getting feedback. It's the audio is looping. Do you have headphones?
Yeah. Do I have headphones? No. Oh.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, I think it stopped.
Okay.
I think it stopped.
All right.
Second part of that is it started just repeating. It was, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah, so surprise them. What's their sentiment towards? So, what's your general faith in humanity now in a large city like LA? So, how do you feel now? Is it like I don't know. I guess 2020 is kind of answering that question for you. Like, are we going to be able to retain civility? So, how do you feel right now? Because you're still in LA. So, yeah, how do you feel about it?
Yeah. I think, it's different now. It's not the same circumstances, right? Now there's, like we talked about, there's a political undertone.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this is being spearheaded by BLM, maybe even Antifa as well. So it's not anything that's, I would say, organic, right? That's being kind of, bringing out the people in the neighborhood, right? So this is different. In terms of my perspective, I don't know. I mean, I don't, in terms of like an opinion of what I see with people, I think right now people are just being led. They're being led down a certain path with the news, with what's happening. And I think a lot of other people have pointed this out. The news isn't unifying. It's basically dividing all of us, and a lot of people are seeing through that. And I think people have to, like in America, I mean, we have to recognize, one, that we're all Americans, and that, at the end of the day, we got to stick together, right? And even though the country isn't perfect, we have all kinds of issues, but it's like a family, it's like you're going to have problems you're going to have that drunk uncle on Thanksgiving that basically says all the wrong things, but you're not going to deny him a plate of turkey, right?
Sure, yeah.
So it's that, I think, in my perspective, the riots were messed up, they're really messed up, but in terms of my faith in people and how I see people, hey man, I grew up with so many different kind of cultures around me, and even the guys I hung out with in high school and the guys I got in trouble with, I mean, they weren't all Korean. I had a lot of Hispanic friends, guys that were from El Salvador, from Mexico. I had a lot of Filipino friends, some Korean friends, white, black. I mean, I grew up in Hollywood, so Hollywood High had a drama department, right? So you got all these drama kids too. So I had gay friends in high school as well. So the way I see it is like, most people, they don't want to be political. They don't want to, they don't want to hear anything like that. They just want to go to work, pay their bills, raise their kids, right? Retire, and then go do some gardening later, right?
Yeah.
But
simple people.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, I think right now what's happening in this country is like, everyone's being kind of politicized and activated, and I feel it, because I see the news out there and I kind of, talk to some other people as well. So everything right now is just polarizing us, So when you have these riots and like in Kenosha, Portland, all these things, they're angry because obviously someone got shot, right? George Floyd and all those guys. But man, these dudes were like, they weren't clean,
No, they're not.
I mean,
there's like something happened. Yeah,
like,
it's something led to it, right? It's not.
Right.
It's not. Why did this happen? This wasn't just a hit squad. That something led up to it.
It's not like cops just showed up out of the blue, right? They're like, hey man, let's mess with this guy. His name is George Floyd.
Yeah.
And then it's ridiculous. I think, one, we're not being reported the news accurately, and two, I think there's a concerted effort to destabilize the country, and to basically destabilize it and to throw ambiguity on the election, and then create as much chaos as possible, and then whoever, I guess, makes the loudest noise in terms of protesting and just not being happy is hoping to get their way.
Yeah.
For most people, like normies, what I call normies.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they don't want any of this.
No.
Nobody wants any of this to happen.
No.
They want the next 10 years to be like the last 10 years.
Just want to go get a job. I just want to maybe get a date, play some video games. That's it. That's it. Like, I'm not trying to conquer the world. I'm not trying to restructure the geopolitical arena. I just want to do a podcast, man. I just want to talk to people about UFOs and stuff. I don't want to.
I'm not trying to hit any protesters on the freeway.
No, I'm not trying to hit any. Yeah, I'm just like, hey, man. Yeah, if I see some unarmed dude get shot, I'm with the protesters. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't good. I just don't think you should burn down a McDonald's. You're just gonna make someone else angry, right? It's, if one of your brothers punches you, you don't punch the other brother. I'm mad I got hit, so I'm gonna hit you. That's like World War I. That's how a powder keg in the Balkans takes over the world. It doesn't work like that, right? But I think you're right. I do think there's a concerted effort. I don't know who's behind it, but I don't think that does matter. But I mean, that doesn't matter for the observation, the empirical observation, and context clues point that it feels like this doesn't feel organic. It feels like someone's rattling the cage, right? And
there's a lot of money behind it too, I'm sure.
Yeah, history would point to that being a foreign power, right? I don't know who that power is. Maybe it's Madagascar. Don't sleep on Madagascar, man. Maybe that's them. They're pitting us against China. Madagascar is going to take over the world. But next part of the question. This dude had like 10 questions. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, everyone was commenting, well, that covers my question. So this is actually most of the questions is this guy. So personally, what were their main, I don't know whether or not to give Zoom a shout out for working or not working, but whatever. Here we go. Where were we? Personally, what made up their main drives and principles that made them do it? That is, what was responsible for you to take up arms and risk your life? But I feel like you already touched on that. Your upbringing, your neighborhood, kind of the masculine male figure in the family, kind of butting heads. I feel like you kind of answered all that. Unless you want to touch on it more. Yeah. I feel like you kind of did. For anyone listening, just listen to the episode. I feel like you kind of touched on all of that. Here we go. What are their thoughts, Tony? What are their thoughts about the current situations and civil unrest in America? Did it block out again? God damn it.
I mean, yeah, here we go.
You back?
Slowly come back. Yeah, I think it's slowly come back.
Okay, we're back. We're back.
The video is still frozen.
Okay. Well, I can see you moving around. Your video is good, so.
Okay, cool.
Time is of the essence. Let's go.
All right.
But yeah, so we kind of touched on this. What are their thoughts about the current situations and civil unrest in America? But we've been talking about that for the last half hour.
Yeah,
so.
But you have to take it out. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not speaking for the whole Korean community.
No, you are the Korean ambassador. You're the Korean ambassador, dude. This is it. This is going into the books. This is canon. That's why I always remind everyone of that. No one is speaking for anyone on this podcast. It's just our own ramblings. That's it. It's nothing more. I don't speak for my family. I don't speak for my brothers. I'm just a moron with a camera. That's all it is.
No, you're not a moron, bro.
Oh, stop it, Tony. How did it feel when law enforcement refused and or never responded? Refused to respond or just never responded for help from the businesses and communities? Because wasn't that a thing? Wasn't law enforcement not responding, and that's why they took up arms?
Yeah, actually, I remember it was Chief Daryl Gates. He's the one that told the police to stand down.
Ooh.
And it was kind of like let Koreatown burn, because there's a lot of animosity, angst, and just pent up frustration, right, within the black community. So just don't confront them and let them have their run. And I guess the Korean stores are going to be the ones that bear the weight of it. And yeah, it was really weird, man. It's like the cops, they took off, and then I remember, when I was talking to my buddy, he was saying like, yeah, there's no cops, and it's crazy because they actually would watch them loot and just not stop them. But you're talking about like 2-3 patrolmen or 4 patrolmen, and there's like 20-30 people running in and out of the store.
Yeah, what are you gonna
do? I don't know. I mean, if I was a cop, I'd be thinking the same thing. Like, man, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna shoot these people? I'm not gonna shoot this person over, like, what he's carrying, like
Reeboks,
spirits.
Yeah.
He's got like 2, whiskey bottles. Running down. I'm gonna shoot some guy over that.
Yeah. It sucks that they're doing it, but yeah, you're like, I'm not gonna end somebody's life. And then on the flip side, like, I have a wife and kids. I'm going home to them. I'm not losing my life in a battle over cigarettes, right? It's right at a certain point. It's like, is it worth? Pick your battles. Are you really going to go into this one? It's if you're in the Secret Service and there's 4 of you and there's 30 people running across the White House lawn, you're probably going to make your stand, right? Because you're the Secret Service. You're protecting the White House.
Right.
If it's 7-Eleven, You might be like,
I'm not over that Snickers candy bar.
No, you want
big gulp.
You want to call in the SWAT team and get some helicopters, all right? Now we're talking, but it's just you and Bob, and you're watching a horde of people. I get paid $30,000 to do this. I'm going home, right?
I'm not.
Yeah, it's.
I don't hold them. There's no bad feeling about that. I get it.
Sure.
I get the word, because I have friends that are in law enforcement too. So I understand where they were at. It was a mob. It was one mob, but like you have like mobs everywhere. The looting was not just in Koreatown, but it was south of Koreatown. It was up in Hollywood. And at one point, I think they were trying to loot Beverly Hills. That didn't go over so well back then, but Hollywood. I mean, they were like, there's a place called Fredericks of Hollywood. It's like a lingerie store.
Yeah.
They broke in there too. I mean, seriously, why did they break in there for? You know, but
I don't know.
I guess someone needed lingerie for the riots, right?
I was about to say, get presents for their wife. You know, Christmas shopping, knock it out of the way. I don't know. It's just, yeah, you don't want to go break into Beverly Hills, man. I mean, Bernie Madoff was the perfect example of you don't steal from rich people because you'll die in a cell. Right? You know, it's like the mafia. It's the wrong people to take money from. How do they feel about the Second Amendment and all the ongoing restrictions being placed on gun owners across America?
How do they feel? How do I feel?
How do you? The person typing it is.
I'm a gun owner. You know, I've been a gun owner since I was 18. Right, yeah. So I had that Remington, but you know, I bought more guns on top of that, and I'm not like an avid, like I got to go shoot every weekend. Yeah. I'm more practical, right? I have different guns because, you know, I shoot them every so often, but I'm not, you know, I see it as a tool, right? The tool that I use that, you know, that's going to help protect my house and that the law allows me to retain. Well, for me, I mean, I think it's awesome that you can bear arms, right? And then back in the founding fathers, the reason why we're out of their arms is because there was a time when during the colonies, the British Army was actually stationed in people's homes. Yeah. Right?
Quartering.
So basically, they were living in people's homes, and not only that, but I mean, you had no rights. One of the reasons why we have the Second Amendment is not, you know, it's not to really protect our home. I mean, that's part of it, but it's really against the overreaching government, right? Yeah. I mean, what the Second Amendment is for, you know, it's for, you know, to keep government in check. Right? I mean, everyone thinks it's just to protect the home and home defense, but no, the real purpose of the Second Amendment was to make sure that the current government that we have doesn't become totalitarian and based. If we need to, I mean, I'm sure they thought about this more in the country. We need to pick up arms and we go and, you know, fight against government if the government's trying to put stuff on us, right? So it's basically freedom, you know, freedom to say no. I guess when you have a firearm, you can say no. You don't have to say yes.
Yeah, when people always bring up why we don't need firearms, and they're like, oh, the U.S. government's gonna like form into a tyranny. They're like, it's not the 1700s anymore. Meanwhile, in 2020, right? You know, well, not now with COVID, the CCP is trying to squash Taiwan. Like dude, like it's happening today. It will always happen. It's not a thing of the past. Whenever in human history someone has had consolidated power, they abuse it. That is just as natural as anything. It's as natural as the sun rising or, you know, flirting. It's consolidated power being abused and corrupted. So it's Do they think that, quote, rooftop Koreans should or would reemerge during a possible looting? So basically, if it happened again today, in 2020, do you think that there would be another round of rooftop Koreans?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, the generation that's around now, I mean,
emasculated.
It's different. I mean, they're like, you know, I mean, we're the older guys now, right? I mean, I'm late 40s, right? It's about the same age as my dad, you know, my dad's generation. So it's hard to say because, you know, my dad's generation, they had military training. So they were used to carrying firearms, you know, they had that training. But, you know, like, you know, my generation, I mean, you look at, you know, guys my age, you guys are all like, you know, accountants, doctors, you know, got really soft, fleshy hands, no calluses, you know, pushing paper all day long. I got the callus from the pen, writing with the pen, right? You got that finger callus.
Just that,
right?
Just that, yeah. You're right.
So they're more of a more of a gentle, gentle generation.
Sure. Yeah, it's.
So I would say I would say no. I
don't think
it would be hard for me to imagine that. You know.
Yeah,
you know, I mean.
Yeah. That's what Dale Comstock, the Delta Force guy who I've had on this podcast several times, he said when he worked for the CIA for a bit, and he can't legally talk about it, but he did work for OGA, other government agency, which is the CIA, but that's the legal term he can use. So he didn't work for the CIA, he worked for the OGA, right? But one thing they would do is they'd be plausible deniability. They'd go into other nations, and instead of bringing a bunch of guys, Americans with American insignia, you send over one or two, and then you build up an army of indigenous people, so that way you could sort of kind of form up one night, do a strike, and then disperse, and no one knows how it happened. What he would say about them is you'd have all these untrained guys, not soft hands, because it's still a very rural, tough area, but relatively the same soft, never fought, never did anything. And he said he never ceased to be he never ceased to be amazed at how out of the softest people, when the moment arose, there would just be heroes. Just these guys would step up. You'd never know in a million years, and they'd be wearing flip-flops with their underwear on backwards with an AK mowing down the guy, and they'd be like, something flips on in the brain, and then you won't know until it happens. So I have some hope that if it hit the fan, my generation would be able to stand up.
That's a good example.
Yeah,
and it's true.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of making light of it, but I mean it's true. When you get pushed, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you, dude. I mean, here I am doing a podcast, When my great uncle Rich passed away several years ago, rest in peace, when he was 18, he was on Omaha Beach killing Nazis, right? Watching his friends get blown up by 50 cal rounds or whatever the German equivalent was. At 18, I was off in the dorms like, oh, finally, I'm away from mom and dad. I can go get drunk and talk to sorority girls, right? It's a different, I don't know, different era of man, I guess.
Well, here's a little outrageous statement. When I was in Germany, when I was born there, I lived in this building, and it was a 2-story building, and the couple, it was an older couple that lived downstairs. The last name was Picard, like Captain Picard. And it's a German last name. But he actually was in the military. He was a German soldier in the Nazi.
Holy cow!
He was I called him Tante Picard, which is in German means uncle, right?
Yeah.
Because he was an old gentleman. But yeah, he was and really stoic, right? Just didn't smile a lot, but yeah, he was a soldier. I don't think he was like he was higher up there, but
yeah, Wehrmacht versus the SS,
Yeah, Wehrmacht, Wehrmacht.
Yeah, that was just the German army. Yeah, they weren't necessarily Nazis. The Wehrmacht was just a bunch of poor suckers like you and me, who we just got drafted. Yeah. You're fighting now, okay.
But when you think Nazi, like, man, these guys are... But the guy was really nice to me. I mean, he offered me candy and hang out and talk with. It's not... It's bad to blanket everybody, with a label, right? That's it's not good to do that. But that's how we start, right? Because we only have so much information. But then once you individualize and you get to know this person, and you're like, man, So I can say, I was friends with a Nazi.
Yeah, right. It's
like him.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I had a guy on who actually had to wear a mask for his identity, but he was in Sayeret, Sayeret, the Israeli Special Forces, and he talked about like killing Hezbollah and stuff. And I'd be like, man, as like a Jew, you must really want to kill him. And he was like, no, I do. But he's like, man, above that, he was like, I just feel so bad for them. I was like, what? That's the last thing I'd expect. And he's like, because once you get on this individual basis of hunting these guys down and killing them, or you do recon on them, you realize, yes, some of them are radicalized psychos that want to kill Jews. He's like, a lot of them are illiterate, can't read or write. They don't know basic math. They think the world's flat. They think the moon is too small. They hold up their fingers and say that's how big the moon is. They have nothing. They have no opportunities, no health care. They have nothing. They have a mud hut, and they got a daughter who they're trying to raise, and they can make $1 every 4 days doing hard labor. Or some well-funded guy comes along and says, hey, if you shoot this RPG at that U.S. convoy, I'll give you $10,000. $10,000. I can put my kid... Yeah, I can give my kid a better life. And he's like, so they take it up. And they're like, I don't know if I'm going to live or die, but I have nothing going for me, so I'm going to go for it. And he's like, I feel for them. So, I mean...
I got to feed my cat.
Yeah, it's... Yeah. a lot of times, like
in wartime, you hear a lot of stories like.
Johnny?
Oh yeah, you there?
Yeah.
Okay, you were saying.
Yeah, you're breaking up. You're crackling up.
No. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah. So what I was saying, there's a story from the war that my parents told me where the North Korean soldiers come down, and when they took part of the South, a lot of the farmers and whatnot, they had them sign this loyalty card, right? Saying they're loyal to the Communist Party or whatever. So when they got beaten, taken up to the North, that's when the South came, and they basically they arrested all these people that signed these loyalty cards. But they only signed them because they were promised so much rice, so much food. People were starving. I mean,
it's a lot. I think the vast majority of the time, if you go throughout history and find the quote unquote bad guys, they're just you, but they were born in a different era with different color skin, with a different name, right? It's just like. Right. If you look at some freedom fighter in the Taliban, he's probably some 18-year-old dude that instead of being named Tommy and is white and grew up in 1990s America, your name's Abdul, you don't know who your dad is, you can't read or write, and you live in Afghanistan. Like, sucks to suck, I got 4 aces, you got, 2s and 4s for your hand, and it's just, and what are you going to do? And now we have to kill them. Like, sucks, right? It's sad. It's not always black and white. Like, there are evil people. The Bin Laden, the SS, like, they're evil. They have to die. They just have to go. But it's not everybody, man. That's a blanket statement. But,
yeah.
So, what did this one do first?
Next one.
Yeah.
Next question.
Last part of this guy's question. We're still on that guy. And then after that, we only have, like, 2. I only have, like, 2 other questions after that. This guy asked, like, 11 questions. What are their recommendations in terms of responding to an LA riot type situation? First, from the perspective of a small business owner, second, as a family man, and lastly, as a community. I think you kind of touched on those too. Is from the perspective of a small business owner, it was, you're first generation, you're underemployed, you're a doctor, but here you are selling tortillas. There's a sort of, the masculine figure. This is your well-being. You have to draw the line immediately. Yeah. You kind of said it as a family man, protect your family, the very patriarchal family structure. And then as a community, you kind of touched on that too. It's not the Korean store, it's our Korean store. I don't know if you want to answer all those instead of having me put words in your mouth, but those are...
No, I think you're doing a great job. I mean, I think you're repeating and you're covering the stuff I already talked about, so I think that's great. But yeah, you're spot on.
Okay. So new guy at user Adversor, ADVERSORR, Adversor. Shout out Adversor. Did your experience with the entire riot and looting situation change your views on anything, particularly the Second Amendment? Again, and were you always pro Second Amendment? Yes, you've owned a gun since you were 18. You've owned multiple guns since then. But yeah, so did it really? So aside from guns, then did it really change your views on? Is there something that was shifted pre-riots, after, that is perhaps still shifted? You kind of said it earlier. You were so surprised at how quickly society broke down. Was that something that was that a viewpoint you didn't have until after the riots?
Yeah, it was. It was actually a viewpoint I had after the riots.
Yeah,
which is like, society. We operate on a very thin veneer.
Yeah.
Of of rules and civility.
Yeah.
Once that goes away, and it becomes very primal. And kind of like mob mentality.
Yeah.
So, so it did. You talk about like a good sociology lesson, right?
Yeah.
The riots are probably a good lesson, in sociology and human behavior and how people act, and so that really was eye-opening for me, and it made me realize that, man, just like things could just snap off, and the verdict was on a Wednesday, things just went downhill after that, and it was Thursday, Friday, and then Friday was when finally the National Guard came. Yeah. And that was like 3 days later, but it was like 3 days of mayhem.
Yeah.
And just like it was so chaotic that I also had a friend of mine that went to USC at that time. He was over at the unit, and USC. If you know USC, it's like an island, right? It's surrounded by it's in near some part of the island.
I interviewed there for med school. I interviewed there. Keck School of Medicine. Yeah, I didn't get in, but I interviewed there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's expensive school.
Yeah.
Actually, I went there. That's my alma mater.
Okay.
Yeah. I call that I call it USC University Second Chances because I was such a screw up and I ended up going there.
That's good.
So I did okay.
That's good. USC University Second Chances, dude. When I was in LA, and I interviewed there, it was November 1st, 2013, which is the day some dude walked into LAX with an AR-15 and killed that TSA agent. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I was there interviewing. That was my only day ever in LA. Was the day some dude shot up the airport. That was a bad omen. Maybe I knew I wasn't getting in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. I remember I was walking around LA in a suit and tie for like 4 hours because all the roads were clogged. Didn't know where I was. Phone died. All the phones are jammed. There's just news choppers in the air. There's SWAT teams everywhere, and I'm just walking around. Yeah, that's my LA story. So, what does the term rooftop Korean mean to you? This is the last question. What does the term rooftop Korean mean to you? Yeah. What does it mean to you? Is it... Because when I say it, it's with like admiration, it's respect, it's cool. It's rooftop Koreans. It's, it's...
Yeah. No, I feel that too. No, I feel that too. I feel that, it's not a derogatory moniker. It's something that's said with admiration and some respect. So I get it. But in terms of how I take it, I don't know, man. It's like, outside of my circle of friends that I know, we never talked about. I never talked about this with anybody else, besides my wife. But she lived in a suburb down near Orange County, so she was so far removed from this. And it's like everybody else in America, they were just watching it on their TV, and it wasn't real, right? But I see it as I guess a compliment, because it's not something that I guess we wanted to do. I mean, it's not like we got to get on the roofs and really flex and show America how it's done. How to protect personal property. That was never in the game plan. It was like, it was more of an oh crap moment, right? Oh crap, like you're gonna lose my livelihood, and I borrowed money to start this business and might burn down. Like, man, and so it's not anything where I would say it's nice now to hear it, but back then it was just trying to maintain your livelihood and just trying to take care of your friends and your family that were out there. And but yeah, I think it's a nice compliment. I think we need more rooftop Americans. People to get on the roofs and just,
heck yeah.
That couple, that St. Louis couple.
Yeah.
That St. Louis couple?
Yeah. Cul-de-sac commandos.
They got a little water pistol.
Yeah.
Right? To like pointing it. It's no. She's like talking to people. It's like pointing it.
Yeah.
See, they had a really nice house. They should have got on the roof.
Yeah. If they got on the roofs, that would have been awesome. If they got on the roofs, that would have been amazing. The meme potential would have lasted forever. Yeah.
That would have been awesome. They should have got on their roof. That nice giant house. Posed up there, and it would have been like, rooftop Americans, right? Part 2.
Yeah. Cul-de-sac right? Commandos.
Baton's been passed.
Yeah, baton has been passed, sir. It is.
Now it's the whole country.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not just
now we all rolling. Yeah, it's. I don't know. I think Johnny Kim took it to a new level though, going to space. He has forever been the rooftop Korean. But yeah, so do like another doing like another 15 minutes. We'll wrap this up.
Cool.
Yeah. So that.
I want to. Ask about that.
Yeah. So so we got through your questions, and what did you? Because you said that on the phone that you had some questions for me. So ask away, Tony. What are your questions?
Do you mind if I use the restroom first? Let me use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah. Me too.
All right.
We are waiting on the great Tony Moon. For everybody listening, I know we've had some audio problems, but I think it's good. I didn't even realize it's storming out. That's probably why. It always happens when it storms. So, that makes sense. So, I apologize. I know this the audio hasn't been perfect, but one day down the road, perhaps months, probably years, I hope for this podcast to have some 8K red cameras, some cinema studio quality microphones. Hope this thing's going to look awesome one day. I'm talking to myself. It's nice. Dude, that's kind of like a running joke on this episode is that I'm the youngest person in the world to have like bladder problems. Because I don't have bladder problems, but maybe I do. I drink so much water. Literally for 185 episodes, people are always like, dude, but you have to go to the bathroom so much. It's so nice having a guest that's like, hey, I need to go to the bathroom. I'm like, yes! Bathroom breaks! Yeah. So,
I drink a lot of water too.
Stay hydrated, man. Just stay hydrated.
A lot of water.
Dude, it's... Mm-hmm. I've got this podcast. I've got like 2 more of these on the ground. Yeah, dude, just... Hydration gang, man. I'm all about that. Yeah, it's people always like, you got a problem. I'm like, no, I just love water. I just opened a new one. Doing another one at the tail end of the podcast. I've got myself another one. But yeah, you said you had some questions for me, and I guess I always do the asking, and so sure, ask away, Tony. What do you want to know?
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, what set you on this path? I mean, you mentioned in your FAQ, you were doing great. You're going to medical school. I'm sure your mom and dad were really proud of you. Like, you got, the golden child thing happening, right? Like,
yeah.
Do that and
yeah, just did a...
change around and...
Yeah, I'll try to answer that. And it's, I was never a good student in, like, despite what my mom says, you're always smart. No, I was a terrible student up until, really, I had a younger brother and 2 older brothers who were all very intelligent. I was always they were like the gifted programs. I was always in like the, go play with blocks and sniff glue programs, right? And like my freshman year of college at Valdosta State, did really poorly, joined a fraternity, partied, acted like a moron, gained a bunch of weight, drank a lot of beer. And my sophomore year, I moved into the frat house. This was on my birthday. So August 7th, 2010, so the day I turned 20, my dad dropped me off at the frat house on 406 Bay Tree Road in Valdosta, Georgia. And I remember that night sitting down with some friends, and it just kind of dawned on me that it was, I've been kicking the can down the road my whole life. I'll get more serious in the future. And I was like, I only have 3 years left of college. And then it was like, my whole life I'd been, I was in a car that was like just kind of like inching towards a cliff, but it was always the cliff was way off. And now I was only 3 years, so now I'm only 3 yards from the edge of the cliff, and I was like, I'm getting close. I was like, what am I gonna do? And I was like, I have no skills. I'm like, I don't want to outlive like an unhappy life. And so I just went into like pure, really it was like terror. That's what it was. And at its core, it was terror. I was like, I need to be successful. And I was like, what's like the loftiest thing I can do? I was like, become a physician. And I just was like, I really did decide on that day. I was like, I'm going to be a physician. And, it's like the hold my beer joke, but it really was. I like said, hold my beer. Like, I'm going to go to bed. And then the next morning I went to the library. And then I did it the next day and the next day. And I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking pot. I stopped partying. And then for the next 6 semesters, I got 4.0s, did undergraduate research in the field of aquatic toxicology, scored in the top 4th percentile in the MCAT, got into pharmacy school, got into medical school at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine, interviewed at the Keck School of Medicine in LA, Tulane in New Orleans, didn't get into either of those, did get into Miami, a school where 15,000 people applied. What? Yeah.
Mom and dad are doing high fives.
Yeah, I had legitimately had like 8 abs. I was like 4% body fat. Had a smoking hot girlfriend, and it was like no one can touch me. I'm Captain America. But the reality is in like my last year of school, just kind of like quiet at first, but almost like a splinter. I started to realize that like I wasn't happy. I was happy with the idea of what I was doing. Looked good, girlfriend, gonna be a doctor, white coat, Mercedes, nice lawn with the white picket fence, big house, you know, like the girl, like Ken and Karen with the guns. I was very happy with what I did. I turned it into a goal. I quantified success, and then I checked all the boxes. But then as I got there and I was getting into med school and had the girlfriend, I realized nothing at all felt different. And deep down inside, I was not happy. And I was like, I don't think I can do this forever. I was like, I don't think I can keep doing this. And my uncle, who went to Duke Medical School, and another uncle of mine who was an orthopedic surgeon, passed away a couple of years ago. But I remember they both said to me, they said, if you're smart enough to become a doctor, you're smart enough to do something else and still make money. Well, that was what one of them said. The other said, if you're smart enough to be a doctor, you're smart enough to make more money doing less work. And I thought about it, and I was like, how much of it is I wanted to be a doctor? And I did. I wanted to help people. I legitimately did. But how much is it was like my own chip on my shoulder, right? A bad student. Now I'm going to be the best I can. Mm-hmm. And I think it was probably a little more of the latter. And so I decided in like March 2014 that I wasn't going to go to med school. I was supposed to start that fall, August 2014. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do it. I don't know what I want to do. I was like, I think, because I wanted to be an anesthesiologist. So I was like, maybe I'm just really interested in psychoactive compounds. So I started applying to pharmacy school. And I decided I was like, maybe I'll just try to go to UGA's pharmacy school. So I actually drove back down. I was living at, my parents live here in Maryland. I graduated in December 2013 from UGA. Girlfriend was a year below me, was still at UGA. And I moved up here to Ocean City, Maryland, where my parents live. And was just I was going to be here until med school started. And this was March 2014. I actually drove back down to Georgia to visit my girlfriend, but also to go interview to do pharmacy school down there because they have a great pharmacy program. And while I was down there, I got a call from my dad and told me that my oldest sibling committed suicide. And he had been going to Georgia Tech, brilliant, was doing classified research for the Air Force, had a smoking hot girlfriend who was going to be a lawyer, and who's still to me like a sister. Yeah. Like I'm still in touch with her. But, you know, had troubles, but no one saw this coming, because if you saw it coming, you'd stop it. And so there's like this perfect storm of existential crisis that you can only get from losing someone close, let alone from suicide. Yeah. There was my own personal crisis of realizing I didn't want to be a doctor anymore. And then there was this tertiary factor in the crisis of I had just done the last 3 years of not drinking, not smoking, not partying, and just studying, and now realizing I didn't want to be a doctor, and I felt like I cheated myself out of 3 years of the best years, right? Because I went to the University of Georgia, which at the time was, according to whatever school has the ranking, we were the number one party school in the nation. And I was like, I just went to the number one party school in the nation, but I didn't party, right? A little pent up, kind of like the generation above yours, right? Doctors and engineers selling tortillas. I felt a little cheated. And so it was this perfect storm of losing a sibling to suicide, of not being happy, and of feeling like I cheated myself out of it, but felt cheated nonetheless, that I hadn't kind of gotten everything out of life that I should have gotten out. And that was just a perfect storm. And over the next 2 years, it was just a perfect storm of just disaster. I put on 67 pounds from just eating, depressed, was taking pills, was drinking a lot, was smoking pot almost every single day, probably every day I would imagine. Was really just doing everything, take cough syrup at night to go to sleep as long as I can, wake up, take a bunch of caffeine or Adderall, smoke pot during the day, drink. I don't need to do anything, play video games, just do whatever I want, whenever I want, screw everybody. And it was everything. It was, I need to live my life because I didn't live my life in college. It's, I need to live my life because, you know, I just lost a brother. Who knows when my life's going to end? And it was just this torrential, just monster that I turned into, that I have to completely own. It was me. No one made me do it. And really just, I mean, I turned into I would say just a bad person. I was angry at everyone. I blamed everyone for everything. It's not my fault. You don't know my troubles. And in 2016, July 2016, got pretty close to suicide myself. Was like, I just don't see how anything's gonna get better. I went from looking like Captain America to looking like Jack Black. I had big old man titties. I had long greasy hair down on my shoulder. I just hated everyone and everything. Was an asshole to my girlfriend, and was just I realized what road I was going down, and I didn't think I was that far off from suicide. I didn't actively have a plan, but I think I was pretty close. Just to spare the details, I was pretty close. And I remember I called my mom one day and was like, I need you to come get me. Like, I think I'm going to hurt myself. And I knew that when I said that was a point of no return, that she was going to come get me. And I knew that, and that's why I said it. It was sort of like shooting up the flare, right? Tapping out. And I knew I didn't have a choice. But the reason I said it is because I knew if I didn't say it, if I started to feel better that night or something, I would lie to myself and be like, I don't need to move home. I'm good. And I knew deep down I knew I wasn't good. And that if I stayed down there, I was probably going to commit suicide. So I told my mom. And of course, the next day I was like, I feel fine. But she was like, nope. She came and got me. But that was the plan. That's what worked out well. So I moved home in August 2016. And really for like 2 years, just did therapy, just went cold turkey on everything, lost. Right now I'm at 200. I'm fluffy. I'm not fat anymore, but I'm still fluffy. I still got like 30 more to lose, but that's the story for another time. And that entire time, I didn't have anything to do, man. All my friends lived in Atlanta.
Here.
What?
Right?
Yeah. Girlfriend broke up with me, which, I mean, I don't really blame her.
Yeah, I said more importantly, you're here.
Yeah, more importantly.
You're here.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's what I try to remind myself of. But, didn't have any friends. They all lived in Atlanta. They were all getting married. They went on to become doctors, lawyers, accountants. Girlfriend broke up with me, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anything to do. And because my mind, I get latched onto things, whether it's pre-med, I get latched onto things, whether it's good or it's bad. So in college, I got latched on to doing good, right? Straight A's. Afterwards, I got latched on to just partying and hedonism. Regardless, I just get latched on. So what did I do when I moved home? I got latched on to Photoshop. Harmless. So I was just like making memes on my phone, and it progressed to the point where like people were like buying the stuff I was making. And if anyone's interested, I will link that below. But I just made like crazy stuff of just whatever was on my mind. Started taking online graphic design courses in August of 2019. And around December, I had wanted to start a podcast since like 2015, and I kept kicking the can down the road. And then finally in December, I was like, I'm just going to make it. I've been listening to Joe Rogan since he started in 2010. I know I sound like a hipster, but I really was listening at the beginning. And I always thought it was cool how he didn't have an agenda or a niche. He just kind of talked. And I was like, I can do that.
Back then he didn't.
Yeah. And then I thought of my uncles. If you're smart enough to be a doctor, I was like, I'm smart enough to start a podcast. So I have no education in videography or audio or anything. I have no idea what I'm doing with this. But just start talking to people. And as I'm sure you can tell from today, I can kind of talk to anybody. And I just push out episodes, and I email Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I just find anyone interesting, and I just shoot them emails. It's a shotgun approach. Vast majority of people don't respond. Every once in a while, someone responds and says, sure, I'd love to. And that's where I am right now. And so, I want to turn this into a successful podcast. Successful being enough money that I could move out of my parents' house. I'm above my parents' garage right now. And, the goal is I can't do anything in moderation. So my goal is, over the next 15 years, turn it into the biggest podcast ever. I want to cast a shadow on Joe Rogan. And I think I will. Actually, I know I will. It's just going to take a little time, but I know I will. And ultimately, I'd like to make a ton of money. And I'd like to donate 99% of it to MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And it is using psychedelic substances to try to cure depression and anxiety, because that's obviously very close to home for me. And I think the most important thing in life is to just leave the earth a little better than you found it. And if everyone did that, we'd be in utopia. And so for me, I'm not going to try to cause world peace, but I think I can choose my battle. And my battle is, why don't I just amass like Elon is amassing a lot of money to get us to Mars. for me, I'm like, you know what? Over the next couple decades, I think I can amass a ton of money and then just really try to push forward, completely subsidize like clinical trials for things like psilocybin, LSD, ibogaine, MDMA, dimethyltryptamine, salvia, really just every psychoactive substance under the sun, 4-ACO, DMT, all these things I think can be used, 5-MeO. I think there's a lot of stuff that's not being you have things where like Zoloft or Wellbutrin, there's like a 5% success rate with people feeling less depressed, but then you use things like LSD and there's like a 95% success cure rate. There are soldiers with PTSD who do a one-time dose in a clinical setting with MDMA, completely wipes out their PTSD. I mean, there's these things grow. I mean, they grow out of the ground, and they are the nectar of the gods. And we've classified them as Schedule I drugs. And to me,
so there was a clinical study done with MDMA on a soldier that had PTSD, and that basically took care of his PTSD.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
So he basically dropped an ecstasy tablet and he was fine.
Yeah. Well, what they do is, it's yeah.
I mean, that's probably not what it was. That's what it is, right? I mean, that's what's in ecstasy. It's like MDMA, but that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. It's not just drop it and you feel better. It's the purpose is you do it in a clinical setting. They did it with family members. They did it with other soldiers around, and it was sort of this. You go into this hyper empathetic state, and you sort of work around all the. And mind you, it's with a clinical psychiatrist. It's with an MD, and it's if you just take it and you're sitting at home, I don't think it's going to do it. I don't. It's you can take LSD and go to a concert, or you can do it in a clinical setting and work with childhood abuse, right? So they're not silver bullets. They don't just work outright, but they like guns. You can use a gun to go rob a store, or you can use a gun to rooftop Korean defend your store. It's about how you use it. These drugs have the capability to, I think, greatly change the face of mental health for humans in general. And as someone that lost a sibling to suicide, I can't help but think, what if this was like, what if these things were readily accessible? What if there were trauma centers where you could go and, just like you go get a surgery or get your tonsils out or get a vasectomy, what if you could go and just, you get recommended by your doctor, by your primary care physician, you go there and you have your X trial, whatever, psilocybin, MDMA, whatever, and you work through your trauma and maybe you need one session, two. But what if that's all you do, and then depression is as easily treatable as chickenpox or getting your tonsils out? Because it used to be not that easy, but now it is. And right now I think we're in the dark ages of mental health. And I think one day it really will be, you can just, maybe it's a thing you have to do every year. Maybe you have to do it every 12 months, like getting your oil changed. But I really think that one day in the future, you will be able to just go have these profoundly psychedelic, impactful, empathetic experiences, and you'll be able to get rid of your depression as simple as getting your tonsils out. And I hope to one day in the future for that to be the case, so that whereas I had to lose a sibling to a suicide, to a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and I think about that every day. I have his initials tattooed on my shoulder. It's been 6 years, and it still hurts to think about. Even now, it chokes me up thinking about. And I think the only thing worse than that is if I didn't do anything about it and I went to my grave knowing that this is just going to happen to someone else. Yeah. Or I could use my mind, I could use my work ethic, I could use my podcast, and I could try to change mental health to a point where in the future, instead of someone losing a sibling to suicide, instead their sibling just had a doctor's appointment on Friday. Yeah, no, they just went and got their depression checkup. They're good. Like, I want it to be like that one day, right? There used to be a time when penicillin didn't exist, and you just died if you got sick, right? Now, you just go get penicillin. You got a headache, it's, COVID. A lot of people died from COVID. I just went down to the clinic, got swabbed. You're good. it can be like that for everyone. I really think it can. It used to be you just got an infection and you died, and now we have antibiotics. So that's about as thorough as an answer as I can give you. That's kind of how I am here now. It sounds very noble. A lot of it is me just wanting to talk to people and laugh and have a podcast. But I do want to leave a good footprint on this world, and I really don't want anyone to experience what my family went through. It's just nothing good comes of it. Nothing good comes of it. You can paint it up and romanticize it. Nothing good comes from it. It's just sheer agony. So, yeah, that's my answer to your question. It's some noble parts, a lot of stupidity, and a lot of just making it up as I go.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Sure. And I'm glad you're doing this, and I'm glad you're interviewing different people, and you're archiving this and putting it all together, So let me know how I can help you. If you need help, anything I can do to help on my end here. Sure. If you want to do another, second round, I'm up for it. I have a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, you don't have a choice, Tony. You're a repeating podcast guest now. I've roped you in. You are part of my army now. You can't say no.
All right.
This is a dictatorship. You have been drafted into my army, whether or not you want to. It's any interesting people, send them along, or dude, just come back on and just shoot the shit, just talk. It's I had a lot of people I have on, a lot of people come on for a first time, and it's about a very specific thing. Today, rooftop Koreans. But then we just become friends, and then we just get on and we talk about whatever. It's, what's going on with Trump or Putin or UFOs or Cardi B or whatever. It's just, what's going on? It's just content.
I'm down for that, man. If you want to have a conversation, I'm down with that because I keep track of news. I look at all kinds of stuff. And
Perfect.
So I'm not saying I'm a master of everything, but I am well versed in a lot of different things. So we can talk about a lot of different things. I think, especially history. I'm a big history buff, and I look at a lot of parallels in the past to see what's happening now in the future. So that's where I draw a lot of the similarities in the past to what's going on now. I see where the country's going. If you want to talk about stuff like that, I'm all for it, man. I think we need more conversations like that in this country. Just talk about the future and talk about the country, and not be so pussyfooting around stuff. And be so afraid that we're gonna hurt somebody. It's just at the end of the day, the way I see it, like if someone says something offensive, unless it was directly meant to hurt you, then don't take offense to it, right?
Yeah.
They don't know any better.
Yeah.
And yet you're retaining this hurt, but we're looking for an apology from a person that has no idea that they've offended you, right?
Yeah.
So it goes back to there's this one saying, I think it's a Buddhist saying. It says like anger or revenge or that is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies, right?
Yeah.
So that resentment that you hold of being offended, you're holding on to that, but the other person has no clue, doesn't even care, until you bring it up. But I think it's we've gotten so sensitive, So any topics you want to talk about, I'm all for it. I don't think I don't know if you want to monetize stuff. So instead we talk about probably won't be monetized, because we'll touch on a lot of things, and I don't probably fit the paradigm, in terms of me saying the things I'm saying because I'm Asian. I don't look white, so things, but so I don't fit the mainstream paradigm of I probably. If saying all these things, if they said that dude's white, right?
Yeah.
That dude's Asian. Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey man.
You gotta find something else that doesn't.
Well, it's perfect. They can't censor me then. If I have you, I'll be like, why are you censoring an Asian man? Because they can censor the white guy with the American flag, right? But they can censor the straight. They can censor the heterosexual white American male. They can't censor you. So I'll just have you on and be like, well, you can't censor him. So but yeah, man, it's.
If I'm not available, you can do a cutout full color cutout. Put me in the back next to the American flag.
That's what I should do, man. I should just get pictures of like Obama And yeah, just put him back there and be Freddie Mercury. Just be like, don't censor a gay man. That's what I need to do, man. It's no. In terms of monetization, I've pretty much accepted YouTube's not going to monetize me because everything I say doesn't fit the whole PC model, and so I just don't worry about it now. To me, that's giving me freedom because now I'm like, you know what? I'm not getting the money through YouTube. I think what's going to happen is just like all things die. You know, MySpace gives way to Facebook, gives way to Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, Blockbuster gives way to Netflix, AOL, right? To me, it's my podcast is just going to keep growing and it's going to jump to some other platform. Maybe it's Spotify. Maybe it's a company that doesn't exist yet. I think I'm going to stick with it. It's going to grow and I'll eventually get an income from it. But I'm not worried about YouTube's regulations, so don't worry about monetize. Say whatever you want, dude. I love Cold War history. I love World War II. I love World War II onwards, and I've listened to hundreds of books, dude. I have guys on, and sometimes we just choose books, and we'll listen to them or read them, and then we'll do an episode about it, about stealth technology in the Gulf War, Operation Paperclip. What is it? The Black. It was the Black Room. It's the predecessor to the NSA. It was like the World War I NSA. It's I would just choose books and it's like our guy book club. We'll just listen to it and then we'll do an episode and discuss it and we'll talk about it. And I do that, man. So it's real geeky stuff. So it's like, that's cool. Yeah, dude, you love history. I love history, man. Choose a topic and be like, yo, let's do an episode. Let's do an episode in 3 weeks on this, I'll put down the day and time. I'll schedule in and I'll make sure I read that book. Or whatever a topic is. Like I said, SDI, that was one for a while. B-2 stealth bombers, thermonuclear bombs, espionage, spying. Yeah, who cares, man? Conspiracies, UFOs, you name it, man. Just choose a topic and go off on it, man. Too much stuff is pussyfooted and it's neat and it's produced. And I don't like it because nothing in life is like that. What life really is this. Talking, internet breaking, bathroom breaks, right? That's what reality is. I don't produce it. I don't like, I'm going off on a tangent, so let's wrap this up because I need to go get some dinner. But because I'm on the East Coast. But thank you, Tony. And it takes several hours to upload, so it probably won't be up till like the wee hours. So it probably won't be up till tomorrow. But I'll send it to you when it's up. Send it to friends and family. Tell them to subscribe. And let's wrap this up. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, send it to me, and then
what?
The sound was getting choppy, so I didn't know if I was cutting you off.
Okay, no, it's breaking up. Yeah.
But I was gonna say I don't think I want to edit anything. I think you just run the way it is.
Okay. Okay. Good. Cool.
Easy. I mean, probably cut out the bathroom.
All right. Yeah. But let's that was awesome, man. Thanks for doing it. Shout out our Roof Koreans. Thank you for the questions. And who was it? Furioso86. Thank you for all those questions. You made an awesome podcast. And thank you, Tony. Shout out to all the Rooftop Koreans and the Rooftop Korean inside of all of us. And shout out Johnny Kim. And stay safe out there, everybody. God bless America.
Yeah, indeed. God bless America.
All right, Tony. I'll text you, and we'll set up another one, all right?
Sounds good, man. Stay safe, brother.
All right, brother. You too. Peace.
Bye, brother.